That's an excellent question, and I always wondered that because I said, okay, number one, nobody can be this stupid, and nobody can be this unlucky. I'm now the chair of the Public Utilities, Energy and Technology Committee. Now, here's a little dirty secret, I'll tell you. So Enron, they actually authored the Green New Deal. 30, and I could give you names if you want, 30 lobbyists fighting against me every step of the way for all 7 weeks because they wanted us to socialize the cost.
He's the chairman of the board of MIDA. I mean, he's the boss of MIDA. He rules MIDA just as much as he rules the Senate. Welcome out to God and Country. I'm Uriah Kennedy. This is Ingrid Bettridge. We are finally paying some attention to Southern Utah. We've had some complaints, so we called down Southern Utah. We have Representative Colin Jack with us coming up from St. George.
Thank you.
Let's discuss power and water and data centers and all that. So like, subscribe, and share. Make sure you're paying attention to that because we really, really need your help to kind of get the voice out there. Look down below for our t-shirts and kind of support the channel. This week is probably one of the most important weeks coming up here in the state of Utah. Tuesday, 2 days from now, election time. So you're going to be out there.
And if you haven't voted yet, you need to go vote in person. You can take if you already filled it out, you can take it with you to the ballot box if you're watching this before Tuesday.
Yeah, we have a lot of big races going on in the state, so make sure you're voting for Carrie Ann Lisenby up here in northern Utah. You're voting for Phil Lyman and Mike Kennedy between central and southern Utah.
Trevor Lee,
Davis County is one of the most critical races, as well as Braden Hess going up against Stuart Adams. Those are
and our county commissioners, if we really want to make a change, we really want to have Scott Fletcher, Susan Lee, and Jonna Whitesides as our clerk.
Yeah.
We have thoroughly vetted these people. We are not watching or reading what the flyers say or finding out on the internet. We have thoroughly vetted these people.
You got big races going on down in Salt Lake City as well. I know that Dan McKay and Doug Fiattiero are going up against it.
Great men.
Both of them great men. And there's a big county commission race going on down in Utah County as well. Brooks Benson has made the primary, so he'll be up there on the ballot down in Utah County as well. So there's a lot of races going on in the state, so make sure you pay close attention to that.
And sadly, we apologize. We have had so many people asking to be on the podcast. And if you are running unopposed and or in a place we hadn't vetted yet, we wish we could have gotten everybody on before the primary, but it just wasn't possible.
Yep. Although this one's on before the primary, and he's not running at all. So,
well, I am running. I'm a representative. Well, I'm unopposed in the primary.
You're unopposed in the primary, but we're going to be discussing big topics today that everybody wants to know about, so which is why he's up here.
We're looking forward to getting some really good information about things that really matter, including the data centers. We're not here to endorse data centers or say data centers are bad, but let's get the information that MIDA's not giving us so we can have a little bit more education on it.
Yeah, we've been trying to tell everybody data centers is not the evil. We're not exactly approvals of MIDA and what MIDA's doing right now because they're not disclosing any information. So let's start with kind of how you started off, because you're an electrical engineer. You do this stuff by trade, been doing it for 40 plus years is what I'm understanding.
Yeah, so...
And then you became a legislator, so...
That's right. So I'm an electrical engineer. I graduated from BYU in 1987.
Go Cougars.
That's right. And And I graduated far enough back that electrical power was an option at BYU. Since then, they've all shifted over to this newfangled thing called computers. The personal computers came out about the time I graduated. And so I've actually enjoyed part of my career going from doing all my engineering calculations on paper and pencil and then computerizing that. And so I worked several years in West Texas at a software consulting firm where we actually computerized the engineering calculations, so you could do in minutes what it used to take you days to do manually.
That must have been incredible.
It was. Anyway, so that was
Well,
a
it's kind of cool that you know how to do it manually, because a lot of people don't know how to do it manually anymore. So
yeah. Well, and I have a twin cousin. I say we're twins, and I tell you we're cousins, and so but we were born at about the same time. My dad and his younger brother, they were married, and their wives gave birth to the two of us around the same time in Provo there. And he's an electrical engineer as well, but he's been in electronics. And so his job was ever shrinking the analog to digital converters that are in your phones.
No kidding.
And in like the Mars rovers and things like that. After 30 years, though, he got tired of Dilbert land and went to work. He teaches electrical engineering at BYU, Idaho. Anyway, that's a long introduction to say that the kids he has now are always saying, whenever he's teaching them some concept, well, do I need to know that? Will I have to do that as an engineer? Can I just use software? And he's like, well, yeah, you can use software. And they say, well, I don't want to know how to do it. And you know, I mean, I've been around long enough that I did it manually. And when we went into the software world, the software doesn't always get it right. I mean, it does exactly what you program it to do.
It only knows what you tell it.
It only knows what you tell it. And sometimes when you know how to double check the math, you go, that's not right.
Don't you think the student, though, that craves learning wants to know how to be able to do it manually?
Well, I don't
just because they
teach
love to
college,
learn.
But what he tells me is they want to just know, how do I have to do the job I have to do, and not why do you want me to know this other stuff. Anyway, so hopefully there are students exactly as you describe who want to know how, because, you know, none of us are getting younger. And there will be a day that I won't be doing this anymore. So who's going to take my place, and will they know how to do it? So, but anyway, yeah. So I'm sorry, that was an aside.
no, go ahead.
Not at all.
Kind of walk through like your experience, so people can really kind of understand your credentials.
Yeah.
You worked for Dixie Power and a few others, and
Yeah. So I got out of college again with a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering with a specialty in power. And I went to work in Kanab right out of college for a rural electric co-op, Garcane Electric. And they had a little bit of everything. So it was a very good training ground for me. And, I mean, we had overhead, underground, we had transmission, we had generation. We had all the voltages. It's the kind of worst case scenario for a utility is having everything. But we did, and it was a good training ground. So after I'd worked there for a few years, I got that offer in Texas where I went to work for that software/consulting company. And then I managed 12 rural electric cooperative engineering accounts. And so I did engineering now instead of for one cooperative, I did 12 cooperatives. And we were developing software to do in your computer what I had been doing by hand.
So you actually worked in helping develop the software.
Yeah. And so, yes, I had written my own software while I was at Garcane because I knew it would save me time, you know, because I'd done computer programming in college. I was joking that I was older than computers, but I am older than personal computers. But in college, we did have big mainframe computers, and we learned on those. And I learned programming. And so when personal computers came out, the old 8088, if you remember the first Motorola microprocessor, or not Motorola, Intel microprocessors, I wrote programs for myself, which, anyway, they were functional. But this other engineer in Texas, he was working, and he had a team of actual programmers. And these guys knew how to not only do the engineering algorithms, but they knew how to make databases and user interfaces, which I hadn't bothered with. I was just in the code, putting in numbers and getting back numbers. But a user will use the program, and he'll want to put data in kind of as a big set and then get answers back as a big set. Well, the more sophisticated programmers than I knew how to do that. So I worked with him, and we developed a software and his team of programmers. And about that time, they were just transitioning from DOS to this new thing called Windows. And so now you could use a mouse, you could click on things, you could see it graphically and not just rows of numbers. And also, he asked me, he said, well, are we doing this the right way? Because I had a degree in power engineering. And I said, well, we're doing as well as a computer can do. I said, the real rigorous solution computers can't do. He says, well, what is that? And I explained it to him. And he says, this new chipset that's coming out next year will be able to do that.
What area was this?
This would have been in 93, when the Pentium came out in 94. And so he said, and the real solution is using matrix math instead of just algebra, but using matrix, three-dimensional matrix in a complex values. And you can do that manually, but at the time you couldn't program a computer to do that. But he said the Pentium will be able to program, will be able to do that. And I said, well, then here's my textbook. I pulled it off the shelf and laid it out. And I said, we need to program it to do this. So we started working on that, and we had the software ready when the Pentium was ready. So we rolled out a new Windows 1.0 when the Pentium came out in 94. And so that little software company I was an employee, he owned it. So we went from like a 20% market share to an 80% market share. They pretty much controlled the software, or the market for power companies for engineering analysis. Anyway, so I worked in that. And then while I was a consultant there, I got asked to do a project in Guatemala. There's an international consulting company that was looking for a software/power engineer who spoke Spanish. And so they came to our software/consulting company and said, do you have anybody who speaks Spanish? And they said, well, Colin does. So I said, yeah, you bet, let's do that. So I learned a new set of vocabulary. I added engineering Spanish to my missionary Spanish and went to Guatemala. And then the next year they said, hey, would you do a project for us in Bolivia? I said, yeah, I'll do a project in Bolivia. So I did that.
Did you learn anything from the projects in other countries that you brought back?
To apply to my day job? Probably they were hiring me because I knew how to do the stuff they needed to learn. So it's always very instructional and you learn new things in life. But technically stuff, I was coming to the project because I knew how to do those things.
Yes, but sometimes when you're operating in a place that isn't the conditions, it's in a different condition, you learn to...
Yeah, you learn to get by, and you learn, yeah, sure, we did that. And you learn to work with native materials, like their poles and cross arms are different than the than the pine and the fir woods we use. They use native hardwoods, and the preservatives are different, and so you learn how to work with those. And anyway, then the next year they said, hey, would you do this project in Argentina? And then I got to the point, I worked for them on the side as a side gig for 30 years and did projects in 30 different countries. They said, would you go from Nepal and
Ghana.
Bangladesh to Ghana, several countries in Africa, most of Central South America, Middle East, Yemen, and Afghanistan, and Tajikistan. And anyway, did those projects, building sometimes power plants, sometimes power lines, sometimes doing studies, telling them some countries like Nicaragua and other countries didn't have electricity in most of the country. They were like 5%. 5% of the country had electricity.
Wow.
And they said, well, how could we rationally lay out electrification plan for the whole other 95% of the country? And so I'd go visit all the villages, and I introduced this new device to the group. It's called a GPS. And so I had a hiking GPS that I used for hiking around southern Utah. And I said, I could take this. Anyway, I used that to take measurements of where villages were and where roads went. And then I could import the waypoints from the GPS into Excel, and I could correct it for latitude and longitude and then make a passable map. And then I could bring that map into the engineering software that I'd helped set up. And then I could create an engineering database and design a power system to serve it. And then I could put costs that I knew. I would find out, well, what are the local poles costing? Other project costs, I would design project costs. And then
This changed the lives of communities.
Oh, yeah.
Countries.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, so I actually spent 4 years living in Bolivia. I took my family there from 2002 to 2006. And I did several big projects. We did one down in the jungle where we electrified 350 villages. We built 1,000 kilometers of line. We electrified 10,000 homes down in the Amazon basin, not in the basin, but in the foothills. It's called the Yungas. You can Google world's most dangerous highway. That was the road I commuted down to work.
Oh, perfect.
On the Yungas Highway, but also did a project similar size up in the agriculture area of Bolivia, up in Potosi. And we did another 10,000 homes up there and a bunch of villages for the agriculture. Anyway, so I did that. And then, of course, I've been working in my day job that pays me money. I work for Dixie Power now for the last 32 years in St. George. And I've seen that grow 6% per year every year for the 32 years I've been there. And so that's kept me very busy. But, what got me into policy making started in 2005. You talk about the Green New Deal, and it is a hiss and a byword in the power business.
Mm-hmm.
Probably to every conservative. But that started in 2005. And under President George W. Bush with a Republican Congress. So I thought my head exploded when I saw all that stuff actually started rolling out in 2007. It passed in 2005, and probably most of us didn't notice.
How did you know? Many of us thought, oh, must be a good thing, must be a forward progress thing. How did you know it wouldn't be a good idea?
Well, that's an excellent question, and I should have said that. So I had been working, right, at that point, I'd been working for a long time overseas, and I had done a lot of projects, built power lines, I had built generators, I had done solar projects on solar homes. My first solar project was to electrify a bunch of homes on an island in the middle of the Ganges River in Bangladesh, where they were never going to get a power line out to that island. And it was a fairly good sized island with a lot of villagers. And so we put solar panels on their roofs with a 12-volt deep cycle battery with a charge controller. And now they could have lights at night. And even though a solar installation is expensive and it only provides 4 hours of lights at night, but it's way better light and it's way cheaper than candles or kerosene or D-cell batteries, and much better light. Okay, so that's a long introduction, but I had done solar projects, I'd done conventional projects. I talked about doing electrification plans for whole countries, and I could tell you the relative cost to extend the grid, the relative cost to build a microgrid, and the relative cost to do solar home systems. And I can tell you how many hours a day you get service for a grid connection, how many hours a day you get service for a microgrid, and how many hours a day you get service from a solar system. And now, in 2005, this Green New Deal, they didn't call it that. They didn't start calling that until a few years later under Obama, but it's the same thing. It came out in 05, it took effect in 07, and the state of Utah started implementing those policies in the state of Utah, too, in 07. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Okay, but what they were selling us also was pollution. This was going to be cleaner and it was going to be better for the environment. Where's the truth there?
Yeah, no, the truth there is not to be found, because I'll tell you.
It's good to hear from an engineer. This is a bunch of crap.
They were right.
And it was a bunch of crap. And again, I had my international experience, not only the relative costs and the relative levels of service, but also the relative environmental impacts. That had been a big part of my job, was writing environmental impact studies, because these were all being funded by the U.S. government. Different names, right? It could be USAID, could be USDEA or USDA. It also could be World Bank, could be United Nations. I was hired by all of those entities, but they're all funded by the U.S. But they all had an environmental component that said you have to make sure you're meeting all these environmental standards. And then I would get an environmental consultant who would come with me, and I would take them out to my projects and show them that I had met all these. One guy was smart enough, though. He says, yes, you met all the environmental standards. He goes, I know you wrote those. I said, well, I did, because when I was a consultant in West Texas, that was also part of my job there for those 10 clients, was writing the environmental standards that met the U.S. standards. So when I went overseas and they asked me, okay, are there environmental standards we can put on this? I said, well, I can give you the ones I've been writing, like in West Texas. And they said, all right, let's use those. And so, I knew.
Do those translate to every area, though, like this island?
Yeah, I mean, so yeah. Yeah, they do. And so you're right. There's different soil types and there's different vegetation types. But, the earth and the wind and the air are the same. And so you don't want to put things in streams, and you don't want to put things in wetlands. You want to have things where it's high and dry. I mean, it's not only good for the environment, it's good for the power line. And people don't need to live in the swamp. They don't want to live in the swamp. So you can make environmental standards that make sense, and to keep things clean, and to clean up after your project, and not to go bulldozing, too much. You have to clear some right of way. That's fine. But I'm just an aside. I was doing a project in Guatemala, and we were staking a line through this jungle to this village that had never been electrified. We did about, 30 or so villages on that project after Hurricane Mitch. That was in 95 or so. But the whole village kind of follows you when you go put these stakes in the ground, because they want to make sure you don't miss their house.
Oh.
And so I remember I wanted to put a pole in the edge of a gate into this guy's house, and I knew he was somewhere in the crowd. I didn't know whose house we were at, but I figured he was in the group. So I looked at the group and I said, is it okay if I put this pole right here by this gate? And one guy spoke up. It was his house. He goes, you can put that pole in the middle of my living room if I can have electricity. And so...
I didn't know you literally meant they're following you. They're all standing there watching.
Yeah, no. As I'm going through, and I have a guy on the theodolite behind me who's taking measurements in a book, and I'm leading the group with a pole so he can measure the distance, and I'm counting in my head my number of steps so I know I'm the right number of meters from the last pole to make it stand up, and I'm picking the location so I can make the pole stand up and serve. You know, I can see where the houses are. And the villagers are in a big group following us along, making sure that I'm not overlooking any houses anyway. So...
that's grassroots right there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and we used to do, I mean, the U.S. government did a lot of these projects, but it was all based on what's good for U.S. Getting back in. We did projects in South America to deal with coca growth, that crop to do cocaine. So we did projects in exchange for them eradicating coca. We did projects in Yemen. I worked in Yemen in 2005 and 2006 because we were trying to forestall the civil war that's going on there now. I was there in 2005, 2006, and we were doing this project and we were doing good. But then in about 2010, we had a different administration who didn't care about a civil war in Yemen.
So there you're learning a lot about policy making.
Yeah. One of my first big policy making projects was in Bangladesh. They were having rolling blackouts every day in the whole country because they didn't have enough generation. So they hired me to go there in 97 to see about building generation in the country. And one of the first things we learned was that no one except the government of Bangladesh could build generation, and they weren't doing it. So that's why they were so short. And we in a separate project were electrifying villages at the rate of 1,000 homes a day. And so as the band grew and the generation...
What kind of manpower does it take to do that? I mean, you had to have a lot of people there.
Oh, yeah. No, well, no, for foreigners, there were 4 of us. And most of my projects, I was the only foreigner. But in Bangladesh, it was a big crew. We had 4 of us. But we had locals that we trained.
Yeah, but how many locals did you have to build a put?
1,000 new... I don't know, 7,000 is the number off the top of my head.
7,000 locals to do 1,000 homes a day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, to do them and to read the meters and to send them bills and to manage the finances. Yeah, no. And,
it's also providing an income to those people.
And housing. In Bangladesh, we built compounds of housing because... their workers are scattered through 1 million miles of country, not literally 1 million, but further than they could walk, and there's no real village for them to live in. So we built apartments for the working folks, and build the warehouse for materials, and build the guest house for folks like me who are going to be rotating through these. We set up about 70 of those stations. That's why I came up with 7,000, because we had 70 of those stations, and each had about 100 or so employees, and to manage all those projects. But back to one of my first big lobbying projects was to go to the government of Bangladesh and say, you need to give us the authority to build power plants. You're not keeping up. And so we had to lobby the parliament of Bangladesh and the prime minister. And they were able to part with a little bit. So they gave us, okay, we'll give you up to 10 megawatts. You can build generators with 10 megawatts. Okay, well, 10 megawatts. So what can we do? Anyway, I went around the country to all the substations and took measurements of all the usage in rural Bangladesh and calculated where I could, and I used the software that I'd helped develop back in the early 90s. And we calculated where we could put 10 megawatt generators and have them absorbed into the local villages and not get lost into the big black hole of Dhaka. Anyway, Dhaka is the capital of Bangladesh. It's one of the largest, most densely populated, most polluted places on earth. Well, I was there, and I worked there full time from 97 to 99, and we became number one during those years. Number one, we took the title from Mexico City as the number one most polluted city on earth. But I don't know, Mexico City may have gotten that back since then, but in 98 or 99, Dhaka was number one.
You know, I wanted to point out the lobbying part because we've mentioned something on a podcast where we had people saying, you know, all lobbying is bad. We need to get rid of lobbyists. I'm like, there is a place for lobbying. You just need a lawmaker who takes that information but still votes what is right for the people, not just because a lobbyist spoke to them. But lobbying's not bad. It's just lawmakers have a responsibility to their constituents, not the lobbyist.
Yeah, that's very insightful. That's absolutely true. We did that in Bangladesh. We did that in Bolivia. We had to lobby different cabinet members and members of their parliament and their president. I worked full time in Bolivia for 4 years, from 02 to 06, and in 4 years we had 5 governments. They have a little instability problem in Bolivia.
Don't say.
But so you would lobby the crew that was there, and we're working on electrification, and they wanted to do electrification, but they're not sure how to do it, so we have to educate them. I wrote their power line construction standards while I was there, but then after a year, you'd kind of get a new crop, and then you'd have to go meet those folks and work through them again. But yeah, no, as a legislator, I meet with lobbyists all the time. And
so when did you decide to run?
Oh, yes, okay. I got distracted. So in 05, I told you the 2005 Energy Policy Act passed. In 07 is when it hit Utah, and Utah started adopting all those things, just exactly like you said. Everybody was sold a bill of goods about, it was going to be better for the environment. It was going to be
good
cheap.
on paper.
It was going to be cheaper, better for the environment, it was going to be more reliable, none of which was true, because I'd had years of experience in those very things overseas. And I'm like, seriously, I have spent decades overseas fixing their power problems to try to make them like the U.S., where we do power right. And now you want us to become a third world country. Literally, you want, and as they set these CO2 goals, they were setting goals that could only have been attained in that year, right? Al Gore's movie came out in 06, and he got an Oscar and got the Nobel Peace Prize. The CO2 goals he set were only at that time being attained by the country of Haiti.
Did they believe what they were selling, or was there a reason?
Well, so, and that's an excellent question, and I always wondered that, because I said, okay, number one, nobody can be this stupid, and nobody can be this unlucky. You have to be doing this on purpose. But I did have an aside conversation with Peter Huntsman. He kind of manages the Huntsman Corporation, and he is I'm very impressed with him. He's very smart on this whole scam of global warming and being caused by CO2 and industry causing it. But I took him aside and I said, do you think these people really believe this, or are they just stealing from us? And he says, I know these people. And I said, good, that's why I asked you, because I don't know, I don't swim in that water, right? I'm just a working engineer. But he does swim in that water. He says, I know these people. He says, they really believe it.
Okay.
I'm like, okay.
That's
so
scary that they're.
However, Al Gore, did he really believe it because he wasn't living it?
Oh, did Al Gore believe it? I don't know about Al Gore.
I think he was just a face and making a paycheck, but there's a lot of people that really wholeheartedly believe that it's human caused, right? But
Well, next
we
Tuesday,
can't produce enough CO2 to harm the planet because of all the plant and everything else we have.
absolutely, we are nowhere near the CO2 maximums that have been in the Earth when Earth was green and thriving in the deep dark past. We have Arctic ice cores that go down and give us a history of the CO2 concentrations for the whole history of the Earth.
But they tell me that those are just melting away astronomically year to year.
Yeah, although the proof is not in the pudding. You can go and they still have ice in the Arctic. But here's an interesting thing that and I'm sorry I'm on such a stream of consciousness, but next Tuesday, right, is primary election. We talked about that, but also next Tuesday is the anniversary of global warming. When Al Gore was a junior senator, he became a sidekick to a senior senator whose name I forget offhand, but the senior senator wanted to promote global warming as the next big crisis. And so, but he wanted to announce it. And so he called the weatherman and said, hey, what's typically the hottest day of the year? And they gave him the date of whatever next Tuesday is.
You mean 2 days after the summer solstice?
Yeah. And so, so they said, all right, well, we'll do that. And then they went to a room, whatever, the press room in the Capitol, and they turned off the ACs and opened the windows so it would be stinking hot in the room. And then they had all the reporters come in, and they did their big reveal of global warming.
They really did all that.
They literally did that. They literally did that. And the reporters were there, and it's hot and sweaty in the room. And yeah, it's the summer is 2 days old now, and it's hot. Who knew that it could get hot in the summer? And they announced global warming, and the press took off with it. Anyway, I was telling the story about, okay, in 2006, Al Gore won the thing. What got me started? Well, I saw they're taking energy policy to below the level of Haiti. I don't know if you've ever been to Haiti. There's no reason you would have.
I've been to the Dominican Republic.
Republic. So
I grew up in Miami. It's almost as hot as 80s.
well, in Haiti, no, it is so poor. And the reason they have so little CO2 emission is because they don't have automobiles, and they don't have industry, and they don't have electricity. We did some projects to try to electrify pieces of Haiti. It's desperate there. Anyway, and so I took it very personally that after working all those years overseas, helping them raise their level of living, now they were going to take the United States and lower us to the worst in the world, Haiti, and make everybody feel good about it. I said, no way, that's wrong. But, I'm not tall and I'm not thin. So I thought, well, there's no way I'll get elected to, a position, but I could get involved in the party. So I got involved in the Washington County Republican Party, and I was very active there for 16 years as a delegate and as a precinct chair, and then as a district chair and on the state central committee and in the county leadership. I felt like what I could do is even if I was too short and not thin to get elected, I could at least talk to elected officials, the tall, thin, good-looking folks, and I could tell them, you gotta be rational on energy. You gotta keep America strong and not turn us into the worst third world country.
Did they trust your education?
Well, some of them did, yeah. I felt like I was moving the needle. They would invite me up to testify in Salt Lake, and I got to go back and talk to folks in D.C. I never testified in front of Congress, but I did talk to congressmen and senators in their offices. And anyway, so about 4 years ago, I'd been up in Salt Lake and I'd testified. I was asked to testify in front of the White House panel on something, when Obama was president even. Some of my friends, so doing that for 16 years, I knew several generations of state reps and senators and Congress people, right? Because the average time is not that long. Average time in Salt Lake is about 5 years. And so in 16 years, I knew the current crop and the two guys before them. And anyway, one of them pulled me aside and said, Colin, you gotta come up here. We need you here on the ground. I mean, you got to come have a vote. You got to be in the room, not just in front of the committee. And I said, well, I'm not tall and I'm not thin. I said, I don't think I could get elected. He said, no. Yeah. So anyway, I worked at it, and sure enough, he was right. I was wrong. You won't hear me say that a lot, but I got elected 4 years ago, and thanks to the supportive leadership, Speaker Schultz, at that time was Speaker Wilson, but they put me, I'm now the chair of the Public Utilities, Energy and Technology Committee.
Makes sense.
And I work on energy policy, and I work with not only the speaker, but I have to go over to the President Adams, and they give me time. Governor Cox gives me time. Usually they'll say, I remember once I had a meeting with Governor Cox talking about data centers, to bring you back to the original question. I got worried about data centers in 2024 because I could see this was a big old train wreck coming electrically, never mind everything else, but electrically. And so I was trying to noodle around the process that we could adopt as a state to make that work. And so I have been appointed by the state to serve on several committees. I keep giving you background before I get to the story, but the little background you need to know is we talked a little earlier. I represent the state on the National Energy Council of the 15 energy producing states.
Let's go into this in more detail so the public understands this. We discussed this pre-podcast.
Yeah.
There's 15
states and 2 Canadian provinces
that produce power.
That produce energy. So it's called the Energy Council. So they produce the coal, the uranium, the oil, and the gas.
Which is crazy to me. 15 out of 50 states
right.
are the only ones that produce coal or gas or oil or anything like that delivers the power to the rest of the states where they can develop power.
Yeah.
And the listener's going to want to know, is Utah one of them?
And Utah's one of them, which is why I'm on
we're
the
a massive coal producer, right?
Coal, oil, and gas, and uranium. Yeah, no, we have the set. Utah's very blessed with natural resources.
35 states depend on the other 15 for any of that for their energy.
Yeah, and also Canada. There's, I think, 11 Canadian provinces and a couple of territories, and two of their provinces do all the oil, gas, uranium for the whole country of Canada. And so...
mind-boggling to me. So there's a lot of states that are very, very dependent on other states. And I'm just supposing that not very many of the blue states are the ones that are producing a lot of the
Not
power.
many of them, although there are some. New Mexico, amazingly, is very blue, but also they're like the number two oil and gas producer in the country behind Texas. So
Texas would be number one.
Texas, yeah.
Where does Utah fit in that?
Utah's like number 7.
No,
So we're not nothing.
no, we're not nothing.
Yeah. So, and I don't know the ranking of all of them, but I do know those 3.
Where's California sit?
Well, California, they've been shutting all theirs down. They're not a member of the Energy Council.
Really?
And they've been shutting their oil and gas down. And
What are the repercussions of that?
oh, well, so shortages, right? Shortages are the repercussions.
power consumption is going up. Their population's going down now, but
Yeah, they're
They're the biggest-
outflowing.
Well, their pollution must really be going down for them doing that.
Yeah, although it's not, because okay, now you've egged me on to a little aside.
My plot worked.
As they now here's a little dirty secret I'll tell you. As they've said, well, we're not going to take fossil fuel powered electricity, which is the only thing that actually makes electricity when you need it. So they said, well, we'll just get wind and solar, which makes electricity exactly when you don't need it, and there's no way to store it and use it later. But so what they've done is they've put diesel generators at all the government offices, and of course the big box stores have put diesel generators to back up for when the grid doesn't work. And the California EPA has told the offices and the big box stores, it's okay if you just go ahead and run more hours than you're permitted to run. So they've torn down all those natural gas plants that they had in
instead of just
California.
car exhaust out there, now you got generator exhaust going out there, which is worse than just generating.
Then if you had these big gas plants, that
So they're making the pollution worse, not better, by setting it.
yes, yep, they absolutely
Very,
have.
very intelligent decision making.
Yep. Yeah, no. And so that's why I got involved, because Utah was making some of those same stupid mistakes, not those exact mistakes. But we implemented a bunch of laws in 2007 that are detrimental to the state. And so
Did
anyway,
those laws ever get pulled back?
I'll take you on another sidetrack.
I'm working on that. But yeah, sorry.
Just a couple years ago, I met with a gentleman who had just been brought to move here from the East Coast because he's an expert over the wind. What do you call those?
Windmills?
The wind turbines. And I thought, why are they moving you here? And he's like, well, the government's moving here so we can expand and the wind turbine, the mills here. And I thought they weren't working. So why are we still pursuing that here in Utah?
Well, so Utah's probably not pursuing it, but probably the federal government was. Or did he say the Utah brought him here?
I can't remember.
So, I mean, it's kind of like those bad horror movies where you just can't kill the boogeyman. You try, you think you
Okay.
killed him, and then you walk away, and then he pops up behind you. And anyway, so we have that a lot too in this world. But
Because they're so expensive to upkeep, and when you get rid of one, they say how much it takes to make one, and where it goes, where all that plastic or all that material goes when
the
it's
fiberglass, the fiberglass blades just get taken out in the field somewhere and laid down.
and they don't deteriorate. They don't.
Fiberglass, they're made out of stuff that doesn't deteriorate, but when you've accumulated a lot of bugs on them, they don't work real well. So, yeah. No, I can tell you electrically why we should have zero windmills attached
Do
to
tell.
the grid, and why we should. Do you
Well,
want
we want to get into all these fallacies. So just for the audience, we'll get into wind, we'll get into solar,
Yeah,
and then we're going to get into nuclear,
yeah. Happy to talk
Nuclear,
about
coal.
exciting news in the nuclear front in
the
Utah.
nuclear front, because we got some articles that we're going to go over today, and then we're going to end with data centers and power and water is the two big questions with data centers. So let's start with the whole wind solar
Teach us.
fallacy and why people think that's the solution.
Yeah. Okay, why people think that's a solution. First, people.
Well, the people are pushing that as a solution because
That's why people believe it, because they've
Because
been
it's-
told.
environmentally sound, right?
Yeah.
But they also kill more
It's
birds.
on the internet. It must be true.
Yeah. No, people tell them that, and they think, well, the sun shines, so it's free energy. Well, yeah, I mean, but also somebody had to build the solar panel. Oh, who built the solar panel? Slave labor in Uyghur slave camps in China. 100% of solar cells are made by Uyghur slave labor in China, which apparently we don't care about.
100% of it.
Yeah.
We don't have any solar panels made in the United
I
States.
learned that on PragerU.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, and I learned about that. One of the energy reporters that I really like to listen to is named Robert Bryce, and he's done a big kind of investigative thing trying to find the solar now the solar cells. So because apparently people at least want to pretend to care about Uyghur slave labor, China will make all the solar cells, and then export those to somewhere like Vietnam, or maybe even to the U.S., where they'll trim off the cells and put them in an aluminum frame or a stainless frame and wire them up. And so then they say finished, or maybe built in Vietnam, or built in America, or built in Belgium. But that's where they assembled the parts. That's not.
People don't realize how
cells.
true that is. So most of my listeners know that I was an importer for years and years. I've imported swimming pools and toys and bikes and you name it. I distributed with Walmart and other big box retailers. And to have the Made in USA label, the only requirement to have that is to assemble it in the U.S. It does not have to be made here. I can't tell how many products that me personally did, or it's all made in China, because it's the only place you can afford to make these things to sell it cheap enough for Walmart and these other big box retailers. Because you as a public would freak out if you had U.S. made in the USA, actual made in the USA prices.
Yeah.
So we would make it over there and then bring it over and put together literally just a few parts, just enough that we could put the Made in the USA label on it or assembled.
Put the straps on the mask, and it's made in the USA.
Well, we didn't have to do that. We could literally have the entire box made in the entire mask made in China, bring it in here, and literally put the mask inside of a plastic bag and put the plastic bag in a box. And literally that was enough for the U.S. government to say, hey, yeah, you guys could put the label on it.
Well,
I mean, that's how bad it is. That's how, because the U.S. government knows that nothing's made here anymore. I mean, the U.S. industry was exported. And if anybody listens to Coquinda, she goes through all this in detail. I would recommend everybody go out and listen to her. And you can find her on
and so
YouTube,
that's the same for solar panels.
same for solar panels. And so if the cells
And the
come in
amount
here
of
and they're made-
earth that you have to move or excavate in order to put one up too. When these environmentalists are like, no, don't destroy the earth.
Well, yeah. So if you're talking, are we on solar or wind? Let me
Wind,
talk about
wind,
solar.
wind. Oh,
Okay.
solar.
Well, either way, we'll talk about both. But solar, so it takes about 5 to 6 acres to put a megawatt. So you're like, well, what's a megawatt? Well, so little red lights on your TV that tells you that it's off is like 1 watt.
Okay.
So if you have a curling iron, that might be like 1,000 watts.
Oh.
And your home, it might be like 5 to 10,000 watts, depending on down in St. George, where we have air conditioning, it's probably 20,000 watts. Up here, where
You're saying per day or per 20,000 watts?
So per instant. So there's, I'm sorry, an electricity.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, we'll get in the weeds just a wee bit. But watts is a measure of power. That's instantaneous. Watt hours is your usage over time. So when you pay your power bill, you pay for so many kilowatt hours. Kilowatts meaning thousands of watts. Kilowatt hours, that's how many hours you used, how many kilowatts over the month. And that's how power companies charge you for your energy consumption. But your instantaneous usage up here, I don't know, I just spent a very comfortable night with my daughter next door in Mountain Green, and they don't have air conditioning at their house, so it's probably 10 kW for their home. But in St. George, it'll be 20 kW on average because of the air conditioners. But then how many kilowatt hours? So how many hours then you use over a month down there? It'll be about 1,500 kilowatt hours per month. Up here, I'm sure it'll be half that. And you probably heat with gas, so yeah, it'll probably be half that. And then, in Bolivia, the average home that we would electrify would use 30 kilowatt hours in a month. And in Bangladesh, maybe 20. and in Africa it was 10 kilowatt
You're
hours.
saying we use a lot of power over here.
Oh, a lot of power. So
We have to have our curling irons.
yeah, and
From 30
microwaves.
kilowatt hours to 10, 20,000 kilowatt hours per home here in the United States.
Yeah.
That's a pretty massive difference.
It is. So that's okay. So excellent point. And I'm having lots of brain things firing here. My synapses are waking up. If I put solar panels on a hut in Bangladesh with a 12-volt battery, right, they're going to have 4 hours of light with 2 or 3 8-watt compact fluorescent lamps, and hugely improve their level of service. And they'll get, 20 kilowatt hours a month. But an American's going to want, I want a TV. I want a deep freeze. I want a fridge. I want a curling iron. I want a microwave. I might want an electric range. I might
My cell
want
phone.
to charge my cell phone. If I'm living in Bangladesh, I dang sure want an air conditioner. I had an air conditioner on my apartment when I lived in Dhaka. Yeah, now I'm talking about a couple thousand kilowatt hours a month, not 20. So then when here in America they start saying, well, we'll just put solar on things. I'm like, solar? You mean the one that makes like 20 kilowatt hours a month? And I'm going to want to use 2,000 kilowatt hours a month? What do you want? You want me to live like they do in the grasslands
Yes,
in
because
Bangladesh?
it's better for the environment.
Yeah. So just quietly sit in the dark and decompose on a pile of organic seeds, right? So that you can be more environmentally
Well, let's
conscious.
kind of quantify that so that maybe the public can understand. So I lived on a bench in Layton, 11,000 square foot house, and I had 90 some odd solar panels up on the roof. And so I could go all year without any power. In fact, I off my solar panels, and I had Tesla power walls, and they're storing the energy.
So did you
Tesla
disconnect? Did you disconnect from the utility?
No, because I could feed it back, and they'd pay me for it. Minuscule, but they'd pay you back for it. So I was feeding power back into the grid. So I could go maybe 9 months out of the year with no power bill, and I was actually making money on the power. It was like $2, $3 a month or something like that for putting a pretty significant amount of power back to the grid. But June, July, August, right? Sun comes out, AC goes on, and I'd shoot up from nothing and actually making money to $250, $300 a month
Yeah.
in power because those AC units would kick on.
Right.
But I had almost 90 solar panels on the roof just to be able to do that on my house. So
Yeah. So you're talking about net metering, which came out in Utah in 2007. It was one of the 3 or 4 things that I said, clearly there's no one at the state who knows anything about electricity or they wouldn't have done this. So do you want to talk about net metering?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and you're saying, do those programs still exist that were put in place under the Green New Deal in 2005? Yes, they do. That's one of them. And I haven't yet figured out how to unwind that one. But so here's the thing. All right, let's talk about solar down on the usage.
yeah.
So if you go back to the origin of commercial electricity, I only have to go back 100 or so years. Thomas Edison, he was the first person to sell electricity. Stuff had been invented before him, but what he invented was the power company, and he electrified the island of Manhattan, and he electrified it with direct current, and I won't get too much in the weeds, just a wee bit, but direct current is like a chemical process. What solar panels, which is a chemical process, or batteries, which are a chemical process. Or you can string a bunch of lemons together and you can make a direct current because they're, anyway. So it's a chemical process, direct current. But direct current, to use it, you're at low voltage and your reach is very short. Now, Edison had competition in the form of, George Westinghouse owned the company, like Thomas Edison owned GE, and General Electric. They electrified the island of Manhattan, and Thomas Edison had a whole stable of engineers working for him. You don't know any of his engineer names, but George Westinghouse, you know his engineer. That was Nikola Tesla. And Tesla came from Croatia. When I visited Croatia a couple of years ago, I went to his birthplace just to take a picture and say I'd been there, but electrical engineering geek, right? So anyway, Tesla came with alternating current, and he'd actually installed some alternating current circuits in Croatia before he immigrated. He went to work in the big lab that Edison had and said, hey, alternating current's the future. And Edison said, no, DC's the future. So Tesla went over to Westinghouse, who was actually working on railroad parts, brakes and things. And so because Tesla went there, Westinghouse opened up a competition with Edison, and Edison did the island of Manhattan, and Westinghouse and Tesla did like the whole rest of the state of New York, because instead of going like 1 mile that you can do with DC, he could go hundreds of miles. Well, you know the end of this story. Tesla won. AC has electrified the whole country and electrified the whole world.
And that's why competition works.
Well, yes. And so, and anyway, so DC, that is very limited. It's low voltage to be able to use it. And I can explain you the physics why it needs to be low and not high, and why there are exceptions, and what you have, the gymnastics you have to do that. But so solar generates at DC. So, and we used that when I did those solar projects overseas. You put solar panels, they go through a charge controller to a D-cell or to a deep cycle 12-volt battery, like you have on your RVs, you know, your camp trailers, and then you have a circuit of lights. And we never inverted it to AC, no alternating current, because that's inefficient and it creates a lot of problems. Anyway, so we would do that. Now, in '05 with the Energy Policy Act, it's interesting. Where did that come from? If you go back a few years, have you heard of Enron?
Yeah.
Yeah, Enron.
Who hasn't heard of Enron?
Okay, well, I mean, not everybody, but you guys have, and I have. And I lived through Enron in the power business. So Enron, they actually authored the Green New Deal. And they said, hey, and
How come nobody knows about that little detail? We didn't know that Enron was one that... Did they actually write that and sponsor that? The Green New Deal?
Yeah, well, they were trying to roll it out from Enron. Of course, then they created solar home systems. They invented solar home systems because, hey, here's the other thing they created. 2 other things, okay, as I think about it. They started making money in natural gas first by changing natural gas from a public service to a commodity. Oh, if it's a commodity, we can make money. They started making money, first guys to make money. Then they said, let's do that for electricity. So then they started to change electricity from a public service to a commodity, and you trade it like a commodity. Well, now these guys were touted everywhere they went as the smartest men in the room, because they had figured out how to make money selling electricity and natural gas. Now, of course, we know the end of the story. They went to prison where they died. At least I think one's dead, one's still alive. But part of that is, hey, not only are we going to have electricity, we're going to sell you electricity twice. We're going to put solar panels on your roof. You'll pay us for that. And we'll sell you the electricity to actually run your home. And so you're going to pay for electricity twice. We're paying for it once is good. Paying for it twice is even better. So, but then they went to prison. So now what? GE, oh, and now we're back to Thomas Edison's call. they bought out the Enron renewables department, the green department. And Jeff Immelt, the CEO of GE, he was good friends with President George W. Bush and said, hey, you know what would be good is if we could mandate some wind and solar all across the country. And I happen to have a company who can help you do that. And then, so that was towards the end of Bush's time, the 2005, right? And he went up, Obama got elected in 2008. And so then Jeff Immelt actually worked with Obama and got an office in the White House as Obama's energy advisor. And then that's when it kind of became codified as the Green New Deal.
Makes sense.
But the common thread was Jeff Immelt from GE. He was the CEO of GE from Bush to Obama. And he had bought that out from Enron, who had, the other thing that Enron did was carbon trading, CO2 trading credits for reducing or storing CO2 and monetizing.
Well, that's still
that.
a huge thing nowadays.
That's a multi-billion, maybe trillion dollar, could be trillions.
As one of my gigs is I'm a business analyst, and right now the investment bank that I'm working for is already funding like 4 or 5 companies that are producing carbon, and they're selling their carbon footprint so they can, or they sell their green initiative to companies that don't have enough carbon displacement.
Yeah, right.
And they buy it from them so they can displace their footprint. And there's regulations out there that require them to have so much carbon displacement.
That's all.
I think
now
that's a big fraud too, but
it's a huge big fraud.
It's a big billion-dollar business right now.
It is, absolutely. It's a big fraud. It's a billion-dollar business, and that also has its roots. That was created by the wizards of Enron. Yeah. So anyway, here's okay. Now that's the political side. Now the physical side. The physical side is solar, right? It's a chemical process. It's built in and baked into the panel. So the elements in the solar panel interact with the sunshine, and the sunshine, creates a current. It's a direct current, like every chemical process, which is fine if you're on a satellite up in space where sun always shines, or, if you're in a grass hut in the middle of the Ganges River where you're never going to get a power line, but your life is greatly improved.
So we're saying there is a place for solar.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I have put solar on, I don't know, maybe tens of thousands of homes around third world countries, where that's what they were ever going to get. I'll tell you a quick aside, though. One of the biggest mistakes I made was in Bolivia, where we had done solar projects in very remote areas. I had that big project down in the Yungas, or the world's most dangerous road. You'll have to Google that later.
Oh, I've got it.
Oh, do you? Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. So,
is this the road you commuted on?
yeah. Not every day. I would go down Yungas. I would go down for 2 weeks and then come back out and be in La Paz for 2 weeks. And
so you add the mist of fog just to make it more exciting.
yeah. Well, it was always foggy, that one section of road. It was just always foggy, but there was,
Beautiful.
so that's two lane traffic.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And big, so buses of people going down and back, and trucks. They grow a lot of,
I've never met anybody that's actually been on that road. I mean, how was that? Like,
it was scary as heck. Yeah, every time I went down there, I said goodbye to my wife and kids and commended my soul to God and went on my way.
I've been on some road on Kowloon, a double-decker bus that I thought had to be the most dangerous road
so were
on the
you on
planet.
those buses when they had to pass each other?
I always took an SUV. I was in a Toyota Land Cruiser. But yeah, no. When
Did you have to pass a couple of those buses?
Every
all the
time.
Did you have? Were you the one on the outside?
Well, so going down, you're on the outside, And going up, you're on the inside, because going up, a truck is loaded with produce, and he's got to get a run at it, and he doesn't stop going up. Coming down, you're usually empty, unless you're a bus, in which case you're also full, but doesn't matter because you're going down. And so since the driver's on the left, you can see the edge, and there's not room for both of you in most of that road. Where there's room is where you saw those kind of turnouts. And
So the guy going downhill has to play the backup game.
he has to play the backup game, or he has to squeeze way over to the edge and hope it doesn't crumble out from under him. Or as the truck or bus goes past you on the inside, as he turns, you hope that the tail doesn't knock you over the edge.
Perfect.
And so about 20 people died every week on that highway.
Every week.
Every week. So now you saw the picture. Mostly it's abandoned. It's used. They've built another road down and around since then. And so that road is now used for adventure, thrill-seeking bicyclists to ride down. Just all they have the road.
I'd ride down on a bike. There's plenty of room there.
There's plenty of room, and there's no cars and trucks and buses on it. Now, when I was commuting up and down that road for 4 years, there was cars, trucks, buses, and two-way traffic. Yeah.
So you know where God was
So did
sending
you
his angels to be
see
busy.
any of those accidents that were...
Not in front of me. I saw just before or just after, and I've got pictures I took of bus scattered down the side of that,
Should have had to
that
bring them.
hill. What's that?
We should have had to bring them.
Yeah, I didn't bring my laptop, but yeah, no, I talked to some people. Anyway, I was telling you about the mistake I made, but so down at the bottom of that road, which went from 16,000 feet up over the pass from La Paz. La Paz is at 13,000 feet. That's where we lived. And then you'd go up the pass 16,000 feet, and then you'd go down that road all the way just about to sea level. And because then down the Amazon is at sea level, but just in the foothills up above there. And the mistake I made was we were electrifying. I had a budget for electrifying the houses for the villages who eradicated their coca crops. And I can tell you the history and the politics about why it was a voluntary eradication and not a forced eradication, because they tried forced first. That didn't work. But they went to voluntary. Okay, how about if the stick didn't work, how about a carrot? Huh? Electricity? Everybody's like, yeah, okay, for electricity. But I also had a budget for places we couldn't reach with the grid to do some solar around.
Okay.
The mistake was putting them too close together. Always before, we'd done solar on the island of the Ganges River, or way out in remote areas that were couldn't even see electric lights from where they were. The mistake was I was doing grid extension, and then up in the foothills around the towns, I said, well, we'll do solar there, where it's too dispersed and too far, and we don't have the budget to extend the grid. But the mistake is the folks with the stupid solar panels could see the folks with grid electricity. Like, I get 4 hours of light, and they get 24/7 light. And they have refrigerators. They have televisions. What even the heck? And so they were, instead of being excited that now I have lights for 4 hours a night, which is a huge, they were jealous. And they were mad. Like, why did we get shafted?
Sounds like a scriptural story.
And so then I was like, okay. Note to self, never do them, if you're doing solar projects, never do them in sight of real electricity.
So did it cause problems?
Oh, yeah. Anyway, but there was a revolution. Well, I told you there were 5 governments in 4 years. The last one that went in just before we left, they installed. All right, and these were not 4 elections; these were 4 revolutions that we went through. The last one installed a drug kingpin who was allied with Hugo Chavez. He was funded by Hugo Chavez. And in his inaugural address, he said, "Death to all Yankees." And we said, okay, well, maybe we don't want to be in Bolivia anymore. So, and every embassy shut down except Venezuela and Cuba.
Yeah.
And so I was on the airplane out of Bolivia with the head of USAID, the U.S. ambassador, our friends from the Netherlands. I mean, we were all on that American Airlines flight out. We're like, okay, good luck with your program. But anyway, so that was the mistake that I made with solar. So, but Enron, they have this brainchild about those same times. And, you know, some of this stuff is percolating over here. You don't know what's percolating over in the smoke-filled back rooms until it becomes national policy. And then it becomes national policy in 2005 Energy Policy Act, and in 2007 in Utah. And they say, well, you're not only going to electrify the country, which we already are electrified. We electrified the country, you know, starting in 1880 with Thomas Edison in New York and George Westinghouse in the rest of New York, and then the rest of the country. We were talking earlier. I did a lot of my career, almost all of my career, in rural electrification. Rural electrification started in 1935. I told you commercial electrification started in 1880, but that electrified about 20% of America, the part that's economically viable, the big cities. Well, nobody cares about stupid farmers in rural areas, you know, because what the farmer going to do with electricity anyway? And they're so far apart, you can't make any money with that. So we made rural electric co-ops starting in 1935 to connect farms and rural residences at cost.
Who did that?
The farmers built cooperatives to do it themselves, and the federal government under the New Deal created the Rural Electrification Administration. They hired some engineers who, because it was the Depression, 35, they hired engineers and accountants, utility folks to make a how-to manual. We're gonna loan money to these farmers who don't know anything about running a power company. Here's the how-to of how to build and run a power company. So then these farmers in 1,000 different places around the country, we have like 8 of them here in Utah, formed co-ops and said, okay, well, here's the manual. It's about as long as this table is wide of, you know, building, engineering, accounting, all the aspects, how to run a co-op, how to run a power company who's not a big giant investor-owned utility. Anyway, so then they electrified the other 80%. So since 1935, we had electrified the country. From 1880 to 1935, they electrified the cities. From 35 forward, we started electrifying the country.
When do we complete that process? Do you know?
Well, I mean, so rural electric co-ops are still extending lines to rural Utah. So you might say it's not complete yet. I don't know. I would say it's still not complete, but most everybody has electricity who wants it. And it's interesting. Okay, now here's another aside, but related. If you look at the mountaintops, and you have a lot of mountains right around here, but a lot of radio repeaters and TV antennas are up on top of these mountaintops around. And a lot of them may not have power lines up to them. They might have a generator, diesel generator, propane generator, or solar panels. But within my experience, I've had big TV antennas come into the power company and say, you know, we've got this generator up on top of this mountain later. It is such a pain to keep going, and we got to truck diesel up there. We'd like you to build a power line up to it. We say, all right, well, here's the price to run the power line up. They're like, holy cow, I can't pay for that. I'll just keep replacing generators. Then a year later, they'll come back and say, okay, I can't stand this anymore. Is it still that? And I'm like, well, it's been a year. The price is a little bit more. Like, crap. Well, I'm just going to keep buying diesel. Then a year later, they'll come back in and say, how about now? Is it cheaper? I'm like, I'm telling you, a year later, it's more expensive. Let's do it now. No, it's still too expensive. It's more expensive. Finally, after several years of this, and this has happened multiple times, and one of them was my repeater, by the way, but after multiple years of saying it was too expensive, at some point you break and say, that's it. I cannot stand replacing, the generators, trucking up diesel, replacing batteries, all this. It is for the birds. Build me the power line. I'm sick of it. And we'll build the power line, and then they're happy. And we had a radio repeater. I'd say that we're not smarter than anybody else. We tried to keep that thing going with a propane generator and batteries and solar panels. And finally, we even gave up. We said, all right, we'll build a stupid power line to our own radio repeater. And it's expensive to build up the side of a mountain, but it's cheaper than keeping batteries and generators and solar panels going. Which brings us back to the 05 Policy Act and the net metering in 07. So I'm aware of this in my career, and I'm like, why on earth would anybody put solar panels on their roof in addition to having power? And it's going to be more expensive and problematic than it is to just run.
How does it become more expensive?
Well, because you have to, in addition to the power bill you're already paying, you have to go out and spend, $50,000-$60,000 for panels. And if you want batteries, maybe that much again on batteries. And I thought, who's going to want to do that? And they said, oh, and we want the utilities to subsidize that. So that takes us back then into how utilities work. And the AC grid, I gave you the history of Tesla versus Edison, and Tesla won that because AC can go hundreds and thousands of miles, and DC can go like 1 mile. Anyway, not only that, but when you have AC generators, whether they're powered with nuclear, coal, or natural gas, right? They run 24/7. If you have solar and it's making DC, it runs at noon plus or minus a few hours. It likes noon, assuming you've aimed it at the sun and they're fixed, right? Because you put it on your roof. You don't have trackers. You put it on the roof and you hope you have a south-facing roof that's more or less at the right angle. And you aim it at the sun, and it's producing most power at noon, and it'll start in the morning, and it kind of makes this bell curve. And so, but plus or minus a couple hours, it's making real whatever it's rated, it's near its rating. And but when do homes use electricity? At night and first thing in the morning. So, and it depends on the season, which peak is higher. Is the morning peak higher or the afternoon peak higher? In the summer, the afternoon peak's higher because you're using AC. In the winter, the morning peak's higher because you're not using AC in the afternoon. And when it's a nice, pleasant spring day or fall day, they'll be the same. So I can look at a load profile and I can tell you what time of year it is just by the shape of the load profile. Anyway, so you have this morning peak and this evening peak, and then you have this valley in the middle of the day because we all leave home and we go to work. And when we're all together in offices, we use a lot less electricity than when we're all dispersed in our homes. So, there's a big valley in the middle of the day, right when solar is producing. And so you get nimrods like in California who are, I probably shouldn't say that in front of the whole world, should I? But you get folks like California who can do arithmetic, but they can't do math, who say, well, if I just stack up enough electricity in the middle of the day, we can add that up, and that will be equivalent to as if we had it in the morning and the evening. Well, the arithmetic might add up, but the math does not.
Well, that's what the salesman at my door said.
Yes, it is, and it's a big fat lie. And if you complain to the Division of Consumer Protection, they can have words with that salesman. We passed a law about that a couple of years ago. You have places like California making tons of excess energy in the middle of the day, which traded in the commodity market created by Enron makes that energy negative value. California, who requires themselves to buy it from their retail customers, they buy all this solar, and they buy contracts. All these big solar fields around Utah are being sold to California because their utilities are forced to buy it, but they can't actually absorb it. So they're forced to buy it, and then they can't absorb it. So then they're also forced to trade it and pay Utah to take it. So then Utah say, well, all right, if you're going to pay me to take it, I guess I'll ramp down my generators and take as much as I can absorb since you're paying me. Anyway, so that's all part of this 2005 Energy Policy Act and the 2007 net metering, where now the utilities have to absorb this excess energy in the middle of the day from retail customers who expect to be reimbursed at something close to retail, and then and they're offsetting energy that California is already paying you to take, so the value is negative from a market standpoint, and it can't be stored or used later. It has to be absorbed in the moment. And we can talk about batteries. Love to tell you about batteries.
I can just hear the naysayers on there like, does he not know there's batteries?
Yes, we do. And I can tell you all about those. So that is a recipe for raising rates. Oh, interestingly enough, if you look at the Energy Information Agency, if you look at the historic power costs across the country, and I've charted it from 90 to present, rates were kind of generally trending down across the country till 2005, and they've been all up since 2005. And I think, what happened in 2005? There were a few of us who said, you do this and you're going to cause rates to go up. And I think the history now for 21 years has proven that if you do the math, we were right. So net metering works out for the retail customer, maybe. You can save money, but only because the utility is forced to subsidize it. So when solar comes in, or whether it comes in from the net metering customer or it comes in from market, and I put market in air quotes because it's not a market force. If the government is forcing California utilities to buy solar, right, they're buying it at 5 to 7 cents a kilowatt hour, and then they're forced to pay another 2 to the 3 cents to Utah to take it off their hands. So now it's costed 7. That's why their top tier rates in California are 50 cents. 50 cents in California. My top tier rates are 6.7 cents at Dixie Power. So compare 6.7 cents to 50 cents. I'll take that difference any day. The market's not market, but it's forced. But what is the utility saving when they absorb, when I have to absorb negative 3 cent power to accept it from California by ramping down my generators? My regular wholesale power costs are 5 cents. So you're saying, well, you said you saved 5 and then you took a negative 3. But no, I don't save 5 cents because I still have to pay for the generator. So I can't not have the coal generator. I can't not have the coal mine because I have to have that power in the morning and in the evening. So when I ramp it down, what am I saving? I'm saving coal. So out of that 5 cents, how much is the coal? The coal is 2 cents. So if I'm out in the market, if I have to pay my customers 5 or 6 or 7 cents a kilowatt hour for their solar, I'm giving them 7 cents, 6.5 cents, and I'm saving 2 cents on coal, but I'm still having to pay the other 3 cents to keep the power plant running. So it's an added expense on top of the other expense that I already had, versus if I just run the coal plant, then I just have all those expenses and I'm only paying for one power plant instead of multiple power plants. Now that doesn't go to the technical problems, which I'm sure we don't have. I've already probably exceeded my time allotment.
This is long format.
But,
You're great.
There are technical issues with solar going from DC to AC, whether it's wind, batteries, solar. You go from or lemons, right? You did science fair experiments with your kids, right? Make lemons and light up a light bulb. Yeah, so whatever. But you use that. You used to back in the olden days. You could hook a DC source up to a DC motor and spin an AC generator, and therefore converting DC source to an AC line. But somewhere along the line, we invented thyristors, which are power-rated diodes, essentially. If you don't know what a diode is, it doesn't matter. It's an electronic component. But with diodes, then you can create inverters, and you can chop up the DC signal and make it look approximately like an AC signal. However, in doing that, you create harmonics. So you put out this
Frequency?
AC. Well, yes. So you're trying to chop it into a waveform that looks like it has frequency to it, right? We have the AC, and you talk about generators and motors that are spinning, and the AC voltage and current is at 60 cycles, 60 times per second. So you chop up the AC wave, which is flat, and you try to make it look like it were DC. It's not, but you try to make it look like that. It looks more like a step pyramid, and so it does this. It's kind of jaggedy. And what that does is it creates harmonics, which then that instability and harmonics burn up the motors that it's attached to. So you'll have, like out in the oil fields, you'll have oil field wells burn up. Or if you're in the rural areas, irrigation motors will burn up. Or if you were in a suburban area, you would have televisions didn't work, or telephones would stop working. That's from harmonics. You also have other things, problems with inverters, where they're trying to follow the voltage because they're not creating voltage. They're trying to follow the voltage, and they do a bad job because they're always reacting. And so what they end up doing is making rapidly fluctuating voltages, which also burns up a lot of equipment. And you'll see multi-day outages in some little towns around rural Utah where they have these big solar fields. And they're like, oh, I don't know what happened. Just the load tap changer burned up. And I'm like, I can tell you what happened. They were chasing the inverters on the solar field, were chasing the voltage, which made the voltage unstable. And then it tripped off. And then the other, there's several things, right? We could talk about clouds going over and turning off the solar field, or solar eclipses. They're pretty good.
So even if a cloud momentarily goes away, it interrupts.
It turns it off.
Okay.
Turns it off. And so then you have these and if it's on a house, what do you notice? But if it's on a big giant field, you lose, like in Ohio a few years ago, I flew to my brother-in-law's house to watch the total eclipse in Cleveland. It was spectacular. I'd never done it. But we said, hey, let's go. because I felt bad. I missed the one in Idaho, so I had real bad.
Well, they have one here in southern Utah too.
Well, I went to the annular eclipse. I've been to a couple of those, but the total eclipse, that's a whole step more. Anyway, in that Ohio total eclipse, the power supply in Ohio dropped 1,800 megawatts. That's a huge number. Anyway, and
Because they were operating on solar?
yeah, because they had that much solar and it all went off. Because right when the solar's on, you ramp down your other resources, and then it drops off. Well, your thermal resources, where you're burning something, nuclear, coal, or gas, you're burning stuff, you're making steam. You don't just fire that on. You got to ramp it up.
Okay.
And so, but the clouds or an eclipse can turn it off instantly. Well, then it takes a while to ramp it back up. So, that causes disruptions. And then there was you probably saw the big outage in Spain, Portugal, and France. Was it last summer? Where Spain says, hey, we've gone 100% solar. And we're like, oh, good luck with that. Well, the other thing inverters do is they're made out of electronics. And if you have a little disturbance on the AC grid, you have big steel generators that are spinning. And if there's a disturbance on the grid, even if it causes a flicker, the generator just keeps going. You can't stop that on a dime. But if you have even a 2-cycle disturbance on the grid with a solar inverter, the inverter protects itself, says, whoop, there's a disturbance, we're shutting down. And so that's what happened in Spain. Who knows what the source could.
But let me interject for the progressive environmentalist who says, well, I don't care, because when you're using the coal, you're depleting our resources. You're polluting. So what's more important, that we save the earth or
that people died in the airport or in the hospital, or that food rotted in 24 hours of outage in Spain and Portugal? I think the guy who was in surgery probably cared that the power went off and all the food rotted in the stores. They probably cared about that. But pollution, you bring up an excellent point. Let's talk about that, because this is not the 1700s of industrial revolution when England first started burning coal to make steam to turn motors, right? England invented all of that in the 1700s. You can take the industrial revolution to that point, and they were making mills. They started making cloth, and they started doing things that people had been doing by hand, and they didn't know about pollution control. They just said, hey, look, we can make cloth, we can make all this stuff, we can make rifles, we can make all kinds of machines. It'll burn coal, it'll make steam. Before, you had to be next to a stream and hook it up to a water wheel and saw wood with it. But now you can put these anywhere. It doesn't have to be next to a stream. But they did create a lot of air pollution. And, even up through World War II, when they had those great fog outs, in England, where you couldn't see, your hand in front of your face.
from all the factories.
Yeah, it was partly from fog, but plus smoke, where they came up with the term smog, right? Smoke plus fog. And so then they started saying, well, we ought to clean this smoke out. So what's in the smoke? Well, there's several bad things in the smoke. Particulates are the biggest part. So we filter out the particulates. There's mercury, there's lead, there's sulfur dioxides and carbon monoxides. And we started in the 70s, 1970, the U.S. created the Environmental Protection Act.
The good old EPA.
The good old EPA. Richard Nixon started that in 1970. But we implemented pollution controls on all of our power plants and on our factories and things. And I was alive in 1970. You guys might not have been, but
Oh, I was.
oh, that's right. You're my age. You told me that earlier. You did. So yeah, you're right. But the air now is cleaner than it was in the 60s. The air is cleaner, the water's cleaner, the land's cleaner. It cost us money. Electric rates went up. The average rates before that were like half a penny or less. Then they doubled. They went up to like a penny. And it was like, holy cow, you doubled rates by putting all this pollution control. And everybody said, well, I guess it's worth it. And it probably was. Well, I imagine being an environmentalist, those poor folks, right? Their grandparents cleaned up the air and the water, got rid of smog. So now you're an environmentalist. What have you got to do? All the smog is gone.
Not
How about
California?
Oh, yeah, well, it's because they've gone the other way. But because they took out their gas plants that had all this pollution controls on it and put diesel generators that don't. But if you're an environmentalist now, you go, well, okay, we could do something with CO2 maybe, which is not a pollutant and is not controlled by the EPA and is not part of the Clean Air Act. So...
What? We're told so much CO2 is a pollutant. It's ruining the planet. It's creating a hole.
yeah, well, the
Ozone layer.
hole in the ozone layer. Yeah, so that was Al Gore's actually his first foray into the environmentalism. So the hole in the ozone was one of Al Gore's first pet projects before he latched on to CO2. But yeah, whenever somebody uses the word CO2 as a pollutant, they are misapplying the word, because the pollutants are defined in the Energy Policy Act, in the Clean Air Act, Energy Policy Act, other thing, and by the EPA and the Clean Air Act. Those pollutants are defined, and CO2 is not one of them. Now, Obama did make an executive order to declare that CO2 was an
What? You mean another president other than Trump has had executive orders?
yeah, wild, right? Right. So and Jimmy Carter had executive orders outlawing natural gas generation, outlawing nuclear generation. Outlawing, that's not the right word because presidents don't make laws, but ordering against nuclear generation. Carter did that. Ordering against natural gas generation, he did that. And and then Obama had an executive order declaring, without any scientific basis, that CO2 was an endangerment to human life, right? We're all going to die from the CO2 because the polar ice caps are melting and the seas are going to rise and Miami's going to go underwater. Of course, where does Obama have his house? I forget. Was it somewhere on the coast next to Al Gore or something? Anyway,
Right next to him.
apparently the seas
Right there
did
in
not
Martha's
rise.
Vineyard.
Apparently seas did not rise. We didn't all die. So President Trump did undo that endangerment finding. Hallelujah. And anyway, so anybody...
Well, they got rid of global warming a long time ago. It was global cooling.
Well, somebody
global
didn't tell the
warming.
public.
And now, because they keep flip-flopping, and now it's just climate change, right? No.
Yeah, right.
Climate change
That's the new word.
Can encompass everything.
Yeah, we give up trying to guess. Well, so when I was a kid, when we were kids, I saw that special on ABC of the coming ice age, and it was narrated by Leonard Nimoy. Did you see
Leonard
that?
Nimoy, no.
Spock. He was Mr. Spock. I'd seen him on Star Trek in the 60s.
Shoot, I would have believed anything Spock
I
said.
would have believed it, and I did. I was a high school kid. And Spock is telling me that we're all going to freeze to death, and we'd had several really cold winters. Really cold winters in the 60s. And I thought, oh, this is it. We're all going to freeze to death because of all the CO2 in the atmosphere blocking the solar radiation from heating the earth. I thought, I'm going to hate dying, freezing to death. This is going to be the
It was
worst.
blocking from coming in, and then we were blocking our heat from going out.
Well, that came later. It was 06. We changed. Okay. And then that's when I started saying, wait. You scared the bejeebers out of me when I was a kid with global cooling, the coming ice age, because it was in the winter and it was cold that winter. And now you're telling me because it's summer that I'm all going to die in global warming. I'm like, I think I've heard this song before. Different verse, but it's the same song. And yeah, and then you go, okay, climate change, because we don't know which one it is. It's one or the other, but either way, send me money. I'm like, no, I'm not believing it. I don't
So
believe it.
you get to these wind turbines. Let's get to wind a little bit.
Yeah.
How much power are they actually producing versus them just sitting there doing nothing?
Yeah, and how much money does it cost to produce that?
Oh, well, so wind is actually one of the resources that's actually more expensive than solar, including all the federal subsidies. So,
And California's got acres and acres and acres.
oh, I know. So does Utah, down by Milford.
Yeah, well, not as many, but then,
Oh, not as many. No, nowhere near.
yeah, no, you can.
Oh, Wyoming.
Wyoming's got a ton of them.
You drive back. I drive back to see my brother-in-law in Cleveland, and you go through whatever it is, Kansas or someplace.
Yes.
You go for miles and miles, and every one of those breaks my heart because every one of those is coming out of our kids' savings account and our grandkids who are not yet born. It's coming out of their money. Because none of that's paid for, right? How old are we? $40 trillion in debt? Is that the latest number?
And there's no moratorium on putting those in?
Oh, yeah. No, Trump has put a moratorium on putting those in. Yeah, so no, hallelujah again. We're going to keep singing the hallelujah chorus here. Yeah, he has put a moratorium on at least funding them with federal dollars. But yeah, they're wind, and I hate to even say these words, but wind is even worse than solar. I mean, solar is really bad, electrically speaking. It has like a 20 to 30% plant factor. Here's another. We're going to get in the weeds just this much, a little bit. So if you take the number of hours in a year, there's 8,760 hours in the year. How many hours does a resource generate of those hours? That's called the plant factor. Coal can do 95 to 98%. You have to take them down for maintenance and stuff, but they can run 95, 98% of the hours of the year. Solar runs like 20% of the hours of the year. And wind, in really good wind, like the Midwest, they can run like 30% of the hours of the year. And in outside that corridor, you come up to Utah, where we're a marginal resource, something less than 20% of the hours of the year. So you're like, oh, well, look, all this free energy, and like it didn't cost us anything.
Well, they're just saying all of the above, right? There's a lot of congressional people saying, let's just do all of the above, because whatever wind and solar we are getting is at least less carbon footprint.
Yeah.
So let's just do a little bit of everything just to bring it down a little bit, right?
Yeah. And I would say all of the above is stupid and lazy, because not all of the above are equivalent. And the return on investment is not equivalent, and the adequacy of supply is not equivalent, and the quality of service is not equivalent. So,
But the environmentalist progressive is going to say, I don't care about money. I care about my environment.
well, and they might, and they should care about the environment. We care about the environment, and I'm saying we fixed it. We fixed it with the EPA and the Clean Air Act. We cleaned up the air. We cleaned up the water. So go home and celebrate. Say, yay, we fixed the air. When I was a kid, when we were kids, we had leaded gasoline, which put lead into the air. And so that's probably why I'm mentally deficient. At some point we were breathing leaded gas for the first 20 years of my life. And, well, we took lead out of the air now. We went to unleaded gasoline. So we should celebrate these victories that we've done, and quit looking for new problems.
New things to cry about.
New things to cry about, trying to find relevance. Say, well, dang, I didn't get to take lead out of the air. I didn't get to clean out the particulates. I should do something. Well, how about finding something new to do? Do something productive, not something reductive. And so, yeah, you're right. Environmentalists will say that, but all of the above is lazy and intellectually dishonest if you actually pay attention. And again, I guess it is into engineering terms when you dive into the real, if you dive into the real
Logistics,
physics,
but yeah.
the physics of making it interface with the grid and the served loads. You start getting into things like, load rejection, like caused the outage in Spain and Portugal. And you get into things like harmonics, which are burning up pumps in the oil fields and in irrigation. And you get into things like the load chasing, like wherever there are large solar fields around rural America that are burning up equipment. Those are technical issues that probably most policymakers don't know anything about. And I'm the only power engineer I've met so far that's in the policy-making world. So I'm out proselytizing, kind of like the lunatic John the Baptist, who's out proclaiming things, and they're like, oh, this guy's right out of the desert. What's he know? But, I'm trying to get the good word out. And I got to say, if leadership had discounted me as an electrical engineer, they could have sidelined me. They didn't have to make me chairman and let me get a position of ability to affect policy. They let me rewrite the state energy policy 2 years ago, and I rewrote it and reprioritized it. I've done quite a few things that if the Speaker Schultz, we talked about him briefly earlier, President Adams, without him, and the governor, bless his heart, has not vetoed one of my bills.
Well, there's some points for our governor and our Senate president.
I know that the president, or the governor has had real pressure from certain groups who shall not be named to veto my bills. I had a bill 3 years ago to tell Rocky Mountain Power they could not tear down their power plants in Utah. That was their plan. Those power plants were going to be gone. There's 4 power plants in Utah. Rocky Mountain Power owns 2. They were going to tear them both down. And the other big one was also going to be torn down. We had a law 2 years ago that I said you can't tear that one down either. And so there's certain groups in the state that really hate my guts for that. But the governor...
They tear it down to force you in another direction, right? If you don't have the power plants and you're forced to rely on others, and then they can stop feeding you power and say, no, you got to go to wind or solar, and they force you in a direction.
That was the plan. Yeah, because the one power plant in Delta is controlled out of L.A. Hunter and Huntington are controlled out of Portland, Oregon. Do you think they were using engineering standards to make those decisions?
The Portland, Oregon one or the California one. That's all.
So I passed laws. Now I say I passed them. I had to get a majority of my House colleagues, a majority of my Senate colleagues, and the governor all had to agree. Yeah. Right? I could have said that, and everybody could have said, yeah, no, Colin's crazy. We're not doing that. And it would have made no difference. But because I had the support of the Speaker and I had the support of the President of the Senate and my colleagues in the House and the Senate, and the governor didn't veto them, bless their hearts, we kept the lights on.
That's awesome.
In Utah, when we could have gone down that primrose path the other states have gone of tearing down the power plants, and then the lights are doing rolling blackouts. What happened there? Who knows? It's a mystery. And I'm like, no, since 2005, for 20 years now, I've been saying, no, This is the path to becoming a third world country.
This is so important to be cognizant of, because I can see the constituents saying, Colin, he's, these are boring, unimportant bills. These aren't significant. He's not passing any policy that does anything
We don't
great.
care about this. You're talking about power plants, blah, blah, blah.
Well, if you hadn't had all that experience in all these other countries, a lot of people probably wouldn't have taken you seriously. But you've got so much experience in these other countries saying, look, I know what I'm talking about. I've been there, lived it, done it.
I have lived
years.
without electricity. I slept on cement floors. I've eaten food out of a can, right out of the can while I was doing these projects out in the boonies where there is no electricity. That is not better than this. Yeah. That is not better. So, I say,
So
well,
how-
I did this. Well, I, with my colleagues, did this. I don't want to say I did it alone, because alone I get
Of course.
So with the last thing, I want to get to nuclear. On wind, the cost to benefit ratio of putting those things up to how much power they actually produce. I mean, what is that?
Oh, it's got to be negative if you factor it all in. So here's the other thing about wind. Versus solar. Like, at least solar, it's a bell curve every day, not counting clouds or solar eclipses. But, right, the sun starts coming up, starts making that chemical process in the solar panel, it makes electricity at noon, it tops off, starts going back down. But you know what that's going to look like, discounting wind or discounting solar or clouds, discounting clouds. Now, wind is a way more random, although it is largely based on temperature changes, right? So the sun comes up, it gets warm. As it's going from cold to warm, wind blows this way.
And of course, they're strategically placed.
Yeah, right where the birds are flying. But okay, let's say we don't care about birds, because apparently we don't when it comes to windmills. Now, if a bird gets into my power line and dies, now I got to document that, have the guy come out,
No kidding.
witness, and then as penance for my sin, I have to not only cover up that structure where that bird committed suicide, but I have to go to every structure like it and cover it up so that his friends don't go commit similar.
How dare you?
So, but for a windmill, that's okay. But here's the other thing is, okay, so you've got this, and we talked about, right, spinning steel, this generator. But we do it with steam from nuclear reaction, gas, coal. And you regulate the speed of the steam and the speed of the generator, so that you create that 60 hertz, that 60 cycles, very steady. You link them all together so they're all keeping each other in check. Nobody can get away. Okay, now we have wind. Now, wind not only blows at semi-random intervals, but it blows at variable speeds. So it'll go, brrr, it'll speed up and it'll slow down. It'll speed up, it'll go off, and it might go off for days. Spain got in trouble a few years back before their big solar outage. They had they had to do rolling blackouts because they're largely dependent on wind, and they had the doldrums for like 9 days or something. The wind just didn't blow. And so
What do you do?
what do you do? Well, nothing. I guess
Well, that's why people keep saying all the above, right? No, let's just do all the above. All the above.
Yeah.
I'm always hearing all the above.
Yeah. Well, so I guess you could own one car that does everything, or you could own 10 cars and take turns driving them.
And that's what the environmentalists want us to do.
And that's what they want us to do. Now, what do you think your relative return on investment of owning 10 cars instead of one? And how much is your transportation costs relative? Well, environmentalists don't care. I have been in meetings where they have said that America won't care about global warming until our power bills are higher than our cable bills. They said Europe has 50-cent energy, and America at that time had 10-cent cost of electricity versus 50-cent cost of electricity. Their stated goal, which has been said in my presence, either they forgot I was in the room or they thought they were just going to convince me, was to get America's cost from 10 cents to 50 cents. So we would stop trying to use so much electricity and stop having a deep freeze and stop having a full-size fridge and stop having TVs.
Half these environmentalists, if that was up to them, we'd go back to horse and buggy and just no carbon emissions, no emissions of any kind.
Well,
But then they'll want reparations for the years they have to go through that.
Oh, now that's another thing. You want to do that little side? No, they are suing us. They are suing the blue states are suing the red states for reparations for us burning coal, gas, and oil, and they want us to pay them billions of dollars. We have suits, New York, Vermont. I don't know, the Attorney General. The Attorney General and I worked on 2 bills together last year that are now laws to prevent those kind of lawsuits in the state of Utah. But yeah, the Utah is currently defending itself against lawsuits from multiple eastern
I don't
states.
get it.
Well, you said it, reparations for global warming.
Anybody seen the Landman?
Oh, I love that show.
I love that show. And I used a quote from them on a couple podcasts ago about the young lady in there dealing with a.
Oh, he takes the attorney out to see the windmill.
No, that's all I was going to talk about. That I'd love to pull that quote up right now. But
I wish I could memorize that speech. I would give it.
It's a great speech. I'll see if I can pull it up here and just show everybody. Well, I'm just saying that the last time we had a couple of episodes ago, we did a little quote where the young daughter goes to college and has to deal with the roommate that's kind of a little bit of everything, transgender and all this other kind of stuff, and having to use pronouns, and she's just doesn't understand any of it.
Well, she's from Texas.
The problem is it took me a week or more to get permission to keep that in the video because of copyright.
Oh, yeah.
I got permission, but I had to file for it and get all this kind of stuff, and I had to finally get the permission for it. And I'll pull up the Landman quote just so everybody can watch it, but it's probably going to make me do the same thing again. I'm probably going to go for this next week.
Yeah.
Going through the process of allowing them to keep it in there because they'll restrict the video because I have it in there.
Yeah. So here's another thing about wind. So I started working up to this, and I'm like a dog chasing squirrels. So, but because it's so exciting, you guys are letting me talk about all this stuff with energy.
This is fascinating.
Usually people get bored and then they want to pretend.
Well, I want to get to the nuclear and tech because we will bore some of our audience out there.
Okay, so this will be my last.
I just hope I can retain all this stuff.
I'll tell you one last thing about wind. Last thing, and then we'll go to nuclear. Last thing is because wind is so variable, because the wind speeds are so variable, what they do with wind is they take it from that random AC signal cycle to they rectify it to a DC as if it were solar, and then they invert it back to AC so they can put it at the right cycles so you can integrate it to the grid. Now, what have you done with those inverters? You rectified it, you inverted it. Now you've created the voltage fluctuations from the voltage following. You've created the load rejection from the inverters, and you've created the harmonics, and you've added the expense, probably doubled the expense of the wind thing.
And killed a couple birds.
Well, the windmill was already killing the birds without the inverters. So now you've made wind as good / bad as solar because you put inverters on it. But you had to put inverters on it or you couldn't use it.
As it goes through that process, does it lose energy?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It loses so I'll tell you, when you go through inverters, we didn't do it when I was doing those projects overseas because you lost like 20% of the energy in the inverter. And then plus you didn't need to, you're just making light. So you could do that with DC bulbs. People who are in that business will probably complain that I said 20%. They'll say, no, we're way better. It's only 10% losses now, but I'd say in my whole power system
So
at Dixie, I have 3%
super efficient
losses.
is what we're.
Yeah. So, they're not efficient and they don't make a good quality product. Anyway, so nuclear.
Well, I'll see if I can keep this in. I'll apply for it. It's going to take me a week, but because it's a good quote, so we'll see.
So if it's missing, come back and watch it.
So if it's
again
missing,
later.
you'll have to just go out and find it on YouTube because I didn't get permission. So,
You can find them on YouTube.
you can find it, but every single one of them, you can't play it. Well, you can play it on there, but you can't be monetized, and so you can't generate revenue. We're not generating revenue. We generate like 3 cents a day is what YouTube pays us. But they tried blocking the video if I have it on there without
A license.
without permission. And I can apply for it, and it takes them a week to give me permission. But we'll watch it anyway and see where this goes.
God, they're massive.
400 feet tall. The concrete foundation covers 1/3 of an acre and goes down in the ground 12 feet.
Who owns them?
Oil companies, we're using the power of the wells. No electricity out here. We're off the grid.
They use clean energy to power the oil wells.
They use alternative energy. There's nothing clean about this.
Please, Mr. Oilman, tell me how the wind is bad for the environment.
You have any idea how much diesel they have to burn to mix that much concrete? Or make that steel and haul this shit out here and put it together with a 450-foot crane? You want to guess how much oil it takes to lubricate that fucking thing? Or winterize it? And its 20-year lifespan, it won't offset the carbon footprint of making it. And don't get me started on solar panels and the lithium in your Tesla battery. And never mind the fact that if the whole world decided to go electric tomorrow, we don't have the transmission lines to get the electricity to the cities. It'd take 30 years if we started tomorrow. And unfortunately for your grandkids, we have a 120-year petroleum-based infrastructure. Our whole lives depend on it. And hell, it's in everything. That road we came in on, the wheels on every car ever made, including yours, it's in tennis rackets and lipstick and refrigerators and antihistamines, pretty much anything plastic, your cell phone case, artificial heart valves, any kind of clothing that's not made with animal or plant fibers, soap, fucking hand lotion, garbage bags, fishing boats, you name it. Every fucking thing. And you know what the kicker is? We're gonna run out of it before we find its replacement.
It's the thing that's gonna kill us all. As a species.
Oh, the thing that's gonna kill us all is running out before we find an alternative. And believe me, if Exxon thought them fucking things right there were the future, they'd be putting them all over the goddamn place. Getting oil out of the ground is the most dangerous job in the world. We don't do it because we like it. We do it because we run out of options. And you're out here trying to find something to blame for the danger besides your boss. There ain't nobody to blame but the demand that we keep pumping it.
Well,
Yeah, I would-
that we just keep pumping it, right?
I would memorize that speech if I could. But he did bring up a couple of things that are important. When we talk about hydrocarbons, coal, natural gas, oil, less than half of that is combusted to make energy. We use half the natural gas that gets produced in the world goes into fertilizer. And since we started making fertilizer out of natural gas, we've doubled the world's food production. Back from the late 1800s, early 1900s, we thought the world was all going to starve to death because we were running out of bat guano to fertilize our fields, and we couldn't feed the earth. Then we figured out how to take natural gas and make fertilizer, and we feed half the world from natural gas fertilizer. all the plastics that are saving the turtles and all that. We use plastic now instead of tortoise shell for things. Half the oil goes to make plastics for all the things he mentioned in his thing. And coal, we use coal, a lot of coal. Coal used to, besides make heat for coal-fired plants, you have a good metallurgic grade coal that burns really hot. That's what we use to make steel. Without coal, there is no steel. Those big giant wind turbines and every other steel thing, that's all made from coal. Coal also uses the kilns that makes lime to make cement. Without coal to make cement, we also don't have cement. Now our ancestors, our pioneer ancestors, made kilns and used wood to make a lesser grade of cement. But then pretty soon you've deforested whole areas when you've cut down all the trees to make charcoal to put it in your kilns to make a grade of cement. But coal is what makes good, efficient, modern cement. So without all those hydrocarbons, we don't have food, we don't have plastic, we don't have steel, and we don't have cement. Never mind electricity and gasoline in our cars.
Moving on to nuclear.
Yeah, let's talk about exciting news this week.
Yeah, going on nuclear. So the big news came out a couple months ago. Everybody all of a sudden it wasn't announced, and everybody started hearing about these C-130s landing in Hill Air Force Base, just right here next to us, and bringing in these mini nuclear plants. We had a podcast a while ago where we had Megan Strader on talking about miniature nuclear power plants being proposed out there in Eagle Mountain down in Utah County. We have energy solutions way out there in the West Desert that are cleaning all this up, and a lot of people are talking about nuclear power, and we've always said, why don't we have a nuclear power plant sitting right next to energy solutions and pumping that power into the Wasatch Front? But these mini nuclear reactors seem to be where everything's going now, because they sound like they cost less, more efficient. They don't have the risk of these dramatic meltdowns like what happened in Chernobyl and all these other type of things. So here's an article that kind of talks about Valor atomic nuclear reactor reaches criticality in Utah. And criticality isn't where it's going nuclear, it's where it's actually live and up and operational. So
you're actually creating a self-sustained nuclear reaction.
Yeah, exactly. So after 4 decades of stagnation, the United States is seeing a resurgence in nuclear technology at about 4:30 p.m. Thursday afternoon, and this was June 18th. So
yeah, day before yesterday.
Yesterday. We're recording this on Friday, but you guys this comes out on Sunday, so it's going to be a few days ago. So from you guys watching this. But this last Thursday, at 4:30 Thursday, Valor Atomic's small modular reactor in Orangeville, Utah, reached zero power fuel criticality. The feat marks the first time a Department of Energy authorized reactor has been built outside of the national laboratory. I mean, the first time since the 60s or something like that we've had a nuclear power plant go live. This was what amazed me too, is Valor's founder and CEO, Isaiah Taylor, who's only 27.
Yeah.
Well, it's a baby.
Sat with his team as they slowly guided their reactor to criticality, the point at which a nuclear reactor achieves a self-sustaining nuclear chain reaction. So kind of walk through this achievement and why couldn't we keep on doing this for this big data center that everybody's talking about up in Box Elder County?
Yeah. Can I take you back a little bit of history?
Sure.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm sorry, you can't, but to understand how big a deal this is, let's talk a little bit about the history of where this came from and how we got here. So, I mean, if we go back nuclear, the kind of origins of nuclear, right, was we won World War II with a nuclear bomb, 2 of them. And so we ended World War II, and right after that, then President Eisenhower said, well, let us make a a civilian application for this nuclear thing we've invented. So instead of just a big bomb, what can we do with this nuclear reaction we've discovered? And we weren't the only ones who were developing this, right? The Nazis were trying to develop it. If they had won, that would have been bad. The Russians were trying to develop it, and they did, maybe through espionage. But anyway, so we were in an arms race for nuclear. We won the arms race. We won the war. Hallelujah. And then it created the civilian application, nuclear power. And so as we rolled that out through the 50s and 60s, everything went well. We got better at it. We came up with different processes. And into the 70s, in the 70s, there was an incident at 3 Mile Island where something didn't happen according to spec. However, we have safety features built in, and all of the safety things worked. And so there was a glitch, but no one was injured. No damage to the environment was done, but it was big news.
But the damage politically was done.
The political damage. So engineers were notoriously bad communicators. Some engineer probably, and I was a kid at this time, but some engineer probably came out and said, well, we had a glitch, and that's the last thing anybody heard. And he probably tried to explain, but all of the safety systems kicked in, and so no harm, no foul. Everything worked according to spec, but everybody's like, oh my gosh, engineers designed this to fail?
I think shortly after that, the only reason I was in the know is I lived in a little beach town in Florida, 2 miles north of Miami called Fort Pierce. It's where they put in, somewhere near there was Turkey. Was it called Turkey Point? Was that nuclear reactor? And people were up in arms and nuclear, we're all going to get radiation. This is harmful. What if it explodes? What could happen at 3 Mile Island? So they spent a lot of time educating the public there, telling them this is safe. The safety features work.
The safety features worked. But, okay,
maybe we can go through that. I mean, just pulling it up. So you have the 3 Mile Island incident, 1979.
79, there we go.
1979. So it says 3 Mile Island Power Station was named after the island on which it was situated in the Susquehanna River near Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. At 4 a.m. on March 28th, 1979, an automatically operated valve in the Unit 2 reactor mistakenly closed, shutting off the water supply in the main feed water system, the system that transfers heat from the water actually circulating in the reactor core. This caused the reactor core to shut down automatically, but a series of equipment and instrument malfunctions, human errors, and operating procedures and mistaken decisions and ensuing hours led to a serious loss of water coolant from the reactor core and partial core meltdown. Partial. As a result, the core is partially exposed, and zirconium cladded of its fuel reacted with the surrounding superheated system in a form of a large accumulation of hydrogen gas, some of which escaped from the core into the containment vessel of the reactor building. Very little of this and other radioactive gases actually escaped into the atmosphere, and they did not constitute a threat to the health of the surrounding population. In the following days, adequate coolant water circulated into the core, and it was restored.
Yes. So now, excellent. Thank you for reading that, because that's interesting. So, but in the 70s, disaster movies were all the rage. So we had Towering Inferno, The Poseidon Adventure, what else? Earthquake.
Jaws.
Yes. So all these things, but one of them was the China syndrome. And it had the supposition, what if, instead of all of those safety reactions that he just read us, what if instead of those working, what if they all failed? What if then it went supercritical, and instead of shutting down, it melted through the crust of the earth all the way down to the core and exploded the world? what if that, huh? That made a pretty good movie. But it got scary. So Jimmy Carter, did his executive order and said, okay, well, we're not going to allow these things. And everybody freaked out. And so some reactors started shutting down that had been built but never went online. And this will circle back to the current reaction. Anyway, so we currently have in the country 100 operating reactors. We did build two. Two of them were authorized, Unit 3 and 4 at the Vogtle plant in Georgia, that had 2 operating reactors. They had room for 5, so they wanted to build 2 more, and they were authorized by name in the 2005 Energy Policy Act. You already heard me cuss for a couple hours about how stupid the 2005 Energy Policy Act was. Well, one of the things it did do that I can't complain about was it did authorize 2 new nuclear reactors. However, because we have a hostile Nuclear Regulatory Commission, they took 20 years, authorized by Congress, came online in 2025 with multiples of cost overruns. Whatever it was meant to cost, it came in at like 4 times that, because it took 20 years, right? It should be in a few years. Okay, so they came online, and extremely expensive, but there they are. So then that takes us to, well, what if instead of manufacturing reactors on site, which is what we've always done, kind of custom design, custom build a reactor on site, what if we could make them in a factory and ship them to the site? What if you could mass produce them like an automobile or like a big Caterpillar generator, right? We have these big Caterpillar engines that we're putting in all over the place. I have 6 of them down in St. George. They make 15 megawatts. What if we made nuclear reactors like that, and they called them small modular reactors? Small because you have to make them small enough that you could put them on a truck. So you could transport them, a truck or a train, and transport them to the site. Modular, so you make it in a factory and you set it up. And if you need multiples of them, you put them in a row, and it's a reactor. So then here was the sea change. So we talked about that. We in the industry, we talked about that. That's exciting. But of course, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission would never let us do it. The Navy does that, right? They power their nuclear subs and they're powering their warships with small modular nuclear reactors. And I've talked to folks in the Navy. I said, why can't we just get one of those? They said, you can't afford the ones the Navy buys.
Oh.
The Navy has unlimited money.
What's small?
Well, okay, yeah. So what's small? So the ones that are built on site, like the ones in Georgia, they're typically 1,000 megawatts. 1,000. Small, the ones you can put on a truck and ship are like 30.
Oh.
So 30 is small.
And they're put on trucks in parts, or?
Well, the reactor part, right? And you got to have multiple trucks because you have the reactor and you have all the other bits, the generator and things. But so they fit on a truck that has to go down a freeway and maybe on rural roads. And so you got to size them down to the size of the highway. So 30 megawatts is about what you can do. So if you need 300, you can do 10 of them. If you need 1,000, well, 10 times 3 is about 30 of them, right? So, but you put them together, but you can build them in the factory, ship them. You get these economies of scale, or economies come down the cost curve of producing them, so they could be cheaper than making them on site, onesie twosie, and ship them to the site. So a year ago, May, President Trump, again, another hallelujah moment. I stayed up and watched this on C-SPAN. He signed 4 executive orders to bust the roadblock. there had been a roadblock to new nuclear. Never going to happen. Never going to. Although in Utah, we had passed some laws that said if we can get past the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, these are the things we want to do in Utah. Someday, maybe. We passed that law in Utah, and I was excited to be a part of it. Well, last May, President Trump signed 4 executive orders that opened the gates for the first time since 3 Mile Island. For the first time now, we can do these things. Now, a couple of big things has happened. One thing he said, not with those, with his executive orders, he says we're going to make nuclear, we're going to follow the science. People say follow the science. Well, how about if we actually do follow the science? Well, sometimes people who say that don't really
Take the politics and the emotions out of it.
Yeah, sometimes they don't really want to follow the science. They want to
Follow the narrative.
the narrative. Yes. Well, how about one of the executive orders? Let's follow science. Let's follow real science, and let's do these things safely and quickly, because long delays don't make things safer. Okay, let's do them safely and quickly, expeditiously. There's a new commissioner, which I met with him a couple of weeks ago, and they issued. So that was in May last year. In September last year, he issued the Nuclear Regulatory Commission issued a permit to permit the designs. Right up to that point, nobody even had a permit to design one of these. It was all talk. And those of us in the engineering world are saying, yeah, but it could happen. But physically it could. But policy-wise, it could not till those executive orders. And then the permit came in September. And now they have a permit to start designing and build some of these. Now, earlier this year, President Trump came out and said, for the 4th of July, 2026, our 250th birthday, I want 12 different nuclear reactors, laboratory scale, to go critical, to reach criticality. 12 different designs, 12 different states. Utah, because we had passed laws to allow for this, and we set up a state nuclear resource, a state energy resource lab down in Orangeville, Utah. We'd set that up because we had that set up. Utah was chosen as one of the 12 states to stand up a nuclear reactor and go critical. And so Valar Atomics was one of the people who got the quote, got the bid to be one of those. And they got I don't know who assigned, I don't know if you were assigned a design or if you picked one, but they got a design that had actually been built. One reactor had been built in real life, a generating station in Colorado that was built and then torn down before it was ever turned on because of the hysteria following 3 Mile Island. Had been built, ready to go? No, tear it down. We're not running it. Anyway, but they got to do that reactor design. So the reactor was built in a factory in California. So this is proving several concepts. You build the reactor in a factory, put it on an airplane, fly it to Utah, drive it from Salt Lake to Orangeville to our
Lake, because it landed here at Dill Hill.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So fly it to, or drive it to Orangeville, where we have that lab set up, the state set it up, and you have multiple flatbeds because you have the reactor on one, the generator on one, other parts. They built the control modules, all the things. I went and visited it a couple of months ago when the reactor was all assembled, and but before it was built, before the containment vessel was built around it.
So this design was so good that it was still relevant today.
Yeah. No,
They didn't say, oh, that, like, we can do something better. This was still...
And the other 12 may also all prove out, but I think this is the first one. We won the race. But built just like the concept, right? Can you build? Question is, can you build a nuclear reactor in a factory and ship it to a site, assemble it, and make it work? Can you do that? The engineers said, yeah, we can do that, but you can't prove it until you've done one.
Well, they've done one as of
Now we've done one.
yesterday, as far as the recording of this podcast.
Now we've done one. We did all of that. We built it in a factory, shipped it, we flew it part of the way. We could have driven it the whole way, but what's the fun of that? Let's fly it some of the way. Let's drive it. Let's show we can do both. Let's assemble it out in Orangeville, Utah, put all the pieces, turn it on. Well, now we have a nuclear reaction going. There could be 11 more. I hope there are 11 more that come online by the 4th of July, which is what, 2 weeks away?
Yep.
What is that reactor benefiting? Who's getting that energy?
Well, so it's not making electricity. It's just a nuclear reaction going on inside a reactor. So, but it proves that you can make it run. Well, so if you can make a nuclear reaction, it gets hot. Well, then the next thing you could do, well, what you want to do is build a bigger one. This is a laboratory one. And I can show you, well, I can't show you pictures. I don't have my laptop, but you can find pictures.
Well, they have the pictures on the article. Everybody can go to the article. I mean, it's out in the Deseret News.
Yeah. So I've been to that lab. I was part of the group that passed the law to create the lab, part of the group that passed. There's a small group of us who work on energy-related bills. And
All
energy
them
policy.
clapping as it goes live there, and then
Yeah.
that's it coming off the C-130 right
Yeah.
there. Or
So that's
C-17. Sorry, it came off a C-17.
so that's the top. It's a long black, looks like a capsule. And
there's the laboratory. So you were here. You were down at this site then.
yeah. And I wonder if it showed one standing. It showed it standing up. No.
Well, we don't have one. I could probably look up one.
Yeah, you could look. Anyway, people can Google that, or you can. I shared photos after I went on my Facebook page, but anyway, you've got the vessel, the nuclear reactor, and then you've got the containment vessel around it, and you saw the 6 holes on top where the control rods go in and out.
Yeah, I can show that just to make sure everybody knows what you're talking about. I mean,
Yeah.
talking about these are
Those,
these
yep,
holes
yeah, 6, I guess 7. There's 6 around and then one in the
in
middle.
the middle.
That's a very stable structure. We build aluminum wires on that same design. Anyway, because it's a geometrically stable design. But then it'll make heat. And you're like, well, what does it do? Well, it doesn't do anything other than prove you can do a nuclear reactor of that design and go critical. Start the chain reaction and it will be self-supporting. Well, then the next thing you do is you probably build a bigger one. It would do the same thing. The engineer in me would have told you, of course it'll work. But then you capture the heat. You boil water or some other medium, which then makes steam, which then turns the turbine, and then it makes electricity. So, I mean, this proves...
It's interesting how the process really hasn't changed since 1800s, right? Because even back when they had the steam locomotives and the trains, right?
It's the same thing.
You put coal into a thing, burn the coal, create steam, turn the turbine, and make the locomotive move, right?
Yes.
The technology itself has been around for 100
Since
years.
those pioneer engineers in the 1700s invented engines.
Created engines, and so it's just a different way of doing it, right? Whether it's coal or it's nuclear, you're creating steam, and
you're turning machines. You can either turn the machines to make cloth, like was the Industrial Revolution, or in this case, we're turning machines
make power.
to make power. Isn't that exciting?
And power in places where electricity can't reach?
Well, in places, in that clip from Landman, he talked about, well, what if we put in all these generators? If we put all these loads out and around, like data centers, but it could be factories or whatever. You've got to get transmission from where the generator is to that site. Well, you got to have steel. You got to have coal to make steel. You got aluminum, wires, all these things. The infrastructure to build those, and and we've spent decades tearing down our industries here in the United States. So even at the power company where I'm buying transformers from General Electric, a good old American company that invented the power company. But because they get, and they have to get, steel from China, because China's the only one making steel now, because we don't want to make steel in America, heaven forbid. Now I'm paying tens of thousands of extra dollars for every big transformer for tariffs, because President Trump, and again, bless him, I mean, I hate to pay the extra money, but I understand what he's doing. He's trying to say, hey, how about instead of paying tariffs, you guys build
them here.
Build them here. How about that? Right? So
We don't, particularly for our power, we do not want to be dependent on China. That would be the worst thing in the world, to be dependent on China for our transformers.
We are.
We're completely dependent on
Well, the transformers are made here in North America, but where does the steel come from? From China. Our nuclear power plants, I told you we have 100 of them. We make uranium. We mine and mill uranium here in the States, but we don't process it. Who processes
China?
That's Russia.
Oh, Russia.
Russia processes our nuclear fuel. We send them our raw milled uranium, the yellow cake uranium from San Juan County, Utah, ship it to Russia for them to turn it into fuel and send it back to us in America. Why aren't we doing that here?
And now I'm coming full circle. My father worked those plants back in the 70s.
Let me
Yeah.
go back to
Or
what
China,
Phil
back in
Lyman was saying, 'cause
Taiwan.
Phil Lyman was part of that group when Uranium One happened, and Hillary sold it
Yes.
to Russia.
Yeah. No, well, and I was in the power business watching that. I'm like, you are not serious right now. I was also a very angry but impotent electrical engineer in Texas. I was working in Texas at the time when President Clinton and Mrs. Clinton sold the mainframe computer technology to China, which allows them now to do guided missiles, ICBMs, back to America. Before they gave them the computer technology, they could build them, but they had no way to get them anywhere. Anyway, that's a separate subject. But we've got to put this stuff back in America, all these pieces.
Main question would be is how much more efficient is nuclear than coal? They're both burning it. They're both making steam.
They're probably not more efficient. The difference, you're like, well, why are we going from coal to nuclear? The whole reason is because presidential cycles are in 4 years. And we had, the prior administration was blue. This administration's red. Next administration might be blue.
Well, blue's against nuclear and coal, so they're against it all.
But I was always told nuclear is more efficient and cheaper
Than coal.
It was more efficient and cheaper when we were in the business. When we were making a lot of them, the saying was, it's too cheap to meter. You just well hook them up and not even charge for it. Maybe just charge a monthly fee, because why meter it? It's so cheap. But now that we're building them, like what? I told you we built 2 in the last 20 years.
But if we ramped it up, it'd be cheaper than coal.
We would come way down that cost curve. Maybe it would be cheaper than coal. Right now, remember, I'm buying coal.
How far as power production, does nuclear produce more power, and how much more power than like a coal plant?
They could be the same. It's just dimension-wise. Coal currently is 5 cents. I told you when we doubled the price from 0.5 cent to 1 whole cent with the EPA Clean Air Act. So coal was at 0.5 cent before we filtered it, 1 cent after we filtered it. Inflation and environmental pressures have moved that up to 5 cents now. Nuclear is coming online at like 25 cents versus 5 cents.
Until we ramp it up.
Until we're mass producing it instead of building them onesie twosie. So where does it come in? I guess we'll see. The only reason we're moving away from coal is just the hype against CO2.
Yeah.
Otherwise, Utah has enough coal. We could power the whole United States for 100 years.
That's how much coal we have.
Yeah, that we know about, that we could go get today.
And our coal mines are getting shut down in Utah.
Coal mines are getting shut down, although by keeping Hunter, Huntington, and IPP open, some that were scheduled to shut down are reopening.
Oh, that's very good.
So, I get a lot of hate mail over that because I kept the power plants on. But,
Well, we do not want to be dependent on any other state, period.
right?
Particularly if it's a blue state. That'd be even worse, right?
Blue states don't produce anything. That's not true. New Mexico,
Well, if our
New Mexico's
power-
the second largest oil and gas state in the country.
Yeah.
But anyway, you're right. No, I don't want to depend on anybody. We would love to be self-sufficient. Now, I know we're way out of time. I apologize. But I love to talk about this, and you've been very accommodating to
What we want to get to the big topic is that we've got data centers already operating. We have one coming on, and we have MIDA not giving us any information so that people can make an educated decision and have a buy-in, because it should be the people.
Well,
absolutely.
before you get started there, so we got this article here, and so people really understand how much power these data centers use, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot of power. The U.S. Department of Energy in 2024 reported provides the most authoritative data on American data center consumption, and it says 2023 176 terawatts, or 4.4% of total U.S. electricity, and by 2028 it's going to be somewhere between 325 and 580 terawatts, or between 6 and 12% of total U.S. electricity. So, I mean, from 2023 to 2028, over a 5-year span, it's between double to quadruple the power consumption we're doing right now. This represents a compound annual growth rate of 18%. They had another one down here. Hyperscale data centers operated by companies like Google, Amazon, Microsoft represent the most significant electricity consumers in the industry. These massive facilities span 100,000 square feet and several million square feet, which is the one planned up in Box Elder is going to be several million square feet. House tens of thousands of servers, consume 20 to 100 plus megawatts of power continuously, but serve millions of users globally. The largest hyperscale facilities can consume over 650 megawatts, equivalent to a medium-sized power plant's entire output. And that's where people are questioning it, right? And you can see that these data centers, just like that image, it's just server farms. It's server after server. And I'm getting comments in my comments section. Well, it's all spyware. I'm like, no, it's not spyware. They're not putting data centers together for spyware.
You use your phone, you use the internet, you're using data
You're
centers.
doing data
My
Gotta
centers.
go
cell
somewhere.
phone, I have videos, very cute videos of my grandkids.
And they're stored in data centers.
They're stored in data centers, right?
The cloud that you store stuff to, your next door neighbor's business and their website, their entire
Healthcare
business,
facilities, their computers can't house all that data.
all that data is going to be served up. It's not government. I mean, we have one big government data center.
There is a big spy data center. It's been there, 20 years?
Yeah, down in Lehigh.
Lehigh, that's been there, or Point of the Mountain. Yeah, that NSA stores every internet email,
And nobody was complaining about that
if you
one.
want to protest something, everybody should have been protesting that data center, but it's been up there for a long time. And
that one
data center,
is spying on all of us. This other stuff is doing
well,
other
even
things.
worse though, that data center's off the old cooling technology.
Yeah.
It uses 100% water to cool too.
Yeah.
It's not like these news servers, and we're going to talk about that too.
But not informing the public, not having,
That's a huge mistake.
you know, and having a Senate president make agreements because he is chairman of MIDA, although he's trying to deflect from that right now.
Oh, way deflect.
and making agreements with somebody who's like, why are they all up in roars? He didn't, what's his bucket, doesn't know, what's his name? O'Leary.
Oh, yeah.
He doesn't realize that the public wasn't brought into this and that they don't know what's going on.
doesn't know the local
He's just like,
politics.
why is the guy that made the agreement with me now telling me, oh, we got to back off and we got to make it smaller? Why'd you agree and now you're throwing me to the wolves?
that whole process was flawed. Absolutely. I mean,
And then we just look dumb to him.
I'd love, I don't suppose we can adequately deconstruct the PR disaster that's been. But we can talk
MIDA
about
was
the technical piece.
I mean, you were in when MIDA got passed, and so
Well, it might have got passed before I was
before
in.
you got in. So
Yeah.
And before Carrie Ann Lisenby got in, fact check.
Yeah.
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 Well,
no.
there's two parts to this I want you to address. One is the power. So they produce a crazy amount of power. We just talked about nuclear. They could feasibly put one of those same sites they down have in Roseville and put it up there and power that have their own power, right? Because the biggest concern people have is anytime you have a new power load, power companies tend to shift the power load and raise everybody's rates up a little bit to cover it, right? So they're not paying their own bill, essentially. It's being subsidized by the community, and that can't happen. And then the other part of it is, how are they going to cool it? And I sent you this article, but there's, and I want to kind of discuss the power side of it and then the cooling side of it. And this article here, Data Center Knowledge article, goes through the cost versus efficiency versus sustainability of different types of cooling methods. One, it's got the computer room air conditioning where you just have an AC unit in the computer room. You're talking like a very, very small little server farm. You have evaporative cooling. Evaporative cooling dissipates heat by converting liquid water into vapor, and this is what is consuming everything, right? Absorbing heat during the evaporation process. Data centers implement this technique in two ways: direct evaporating cooling, where server room air passes through a water-soaked membrane, and then direct evaporating cooling, which uses heat exchangers to cool. Most of them are off of heat exchangers, but this is the one that is the most controversial because this one uses tons of water. And evaporative cooling is what the NSA Center is using down in Lehigh.
Because it's been there 20 years.
They've been there 20 years. But then they've got these new methods, right?
Yeah.
Direct-to-chip cooling, which is precisely targets heat sources for efficient dissipation. It's kind of using the same process, but only right around the heat-producing source.
Yeah, right on the chip.
Right on the chip itself, and not the entire room, right? So it's the same process, but using less. But then the new technology is what they call immersion cooling. They have single-phase and multiple-phase immersion cooling, where the computer itself is merged in liquid. It is actually operating inside of a liquid. And people think, well, that's kind of counterintuitive to electricity, right? But
It's not like throwing your laptop into the lake.
into the lake, right? It's single-phase immersion cooling submerges IT equipment directly in non-conductive liquid that efficiently
There's the difference.
absorbs and dissipates heat. This approach eliminates traditional air or water-based cooling methods, offering an effective, sustainable solution. And then multi-phase at the cutting edge of cooling technology, which is what they're considering. I researched that they're considering up at the data center up in Logan, so people are freaking out for nothing. They're going to use this multi-phase immersion cooling. At the cutting edge of cooling
But
technology.
no, but then they're saying, but then sometimes you have to release it. And are you releasing toxins into the environment?
No, it's just submerged the whole time. Yeah, it's multi-phase immersion cooling builds and on the principles of single-phase system by submerging IT equipment in non-conductive liquid that boils when exposed to equipment's heat. As the liquid evaporates, it efficiently removes heat, making it one of the fastest and most effective cooling solutions available. So it does use water because it puts water in and makes it into non-conductive, but the amount of it is significantly less.
Yeah, and like a closed loop system.
And in a closed loop system. So
So let's talk about those two things.
Power, water.
Yeah.
Power and cooling.
Okay.
And
So-
also land, if you can cover, because some people are saying, well, it's private land. Why does the public even have a say-so in it? So
Okay, so if I
go
get
power and cooling
let's do
first.
power,
Then you can put your
we'll do
legislative
water,
hat on,
and then let's talk about land.
you can put your engineer hat for the.
because some
for the
people are
power
going to
and
have
water.
fast-forwarded just to this part.
Well, yeah, and I do wear multiple hats, and so sometimes you hear me talking as a power engineer, sometimes you hear me talking as a legislator, and so I might say we, and I might mean we the legislature. I
Okay.
might mean we the power company, and I might just mean we the royal we, which is me, myself, and I. But so let's talk about power. But I want to say two things about power. One is costs. So I was worried about this exact issue that you described, where a new load comes onto a power company and they kind of absorb that load. And if it's expensive to serve, then everybody's rates go up a little bit. And that's kind of standard, at least in the investor-owned model, where they're regulated by the Utah Public Service Commission, so that nobody is being discriminated against. It's a little bit socialist, but it's also allows for the greatest electrification. I knew that, and I was worried about that because I was hearing about data center loads 2 years ago. And so I started saying, well, you know what we've got to do is make the data centers pay their own way. So I opened a bill file. This was in 24 for the 25 session. And so when I opened the bill file, I had a lot of people come to me and say, well, because they knew I was working on it, and they say, well, no, what you need to do is go do what Virginia's doing, because they're just hooking up data centers and not even charging them for it. And I'm like, well, that sounds bad. So how are they doing it? And they say, I don't know, they're just doing it. So, but because I represent the state on several national, I told you about the Energy Committee, but I'm on several other national energy committees, not the Energy Council, but other committees. And I was in Baltimore, and Dominion Energy, the big power company from Virginia, was there. And I got them aside. I said, tell me, how is it you're connecting data centers, these big data centers, and you're not charging them for it? I said, you must have like a spare nuclear reactor around that you're just loading up, right? He goes, yeah, we are. We had a big reactor that was lightly loaded. We're filling it up. And I said, okay, well, how long before it's fully occupied? He said, oh, it's full now. I said, okay, so then the next house that comes to apply for electricity, how are you going to serve that? Oh, we'll build another reactor. I said, and who's going to pay for that? Oh, we'll put it into rates. Everybody will pay for it. I'm like, okay, so you are raising rates to pay for these data centers. Everybody's saying, Colin, you got to do Utah like Virginia. And I'm like, I talked to Virginia and I found out it's exactly what I thought it must be. And no, we're not going to do that. So anyway, I brought this bill to say, okay, large loads. I didn't want to call out data centers. I just called it large loads. And so I drew the bright line between what are normal loads in Utah today. The largest load in Utah today is the big steel plant, Nucor Steel, up at Plymouth, Utah, up on the Idaho border, and they melt those old crash
Does
cars.
Kennecott have their own power up there?
Yeah, Kennecott has their own power, so they actually have more power, but they make a lot of their own power. So as a load, they're not bigger than Nucor. Nucor is the biggest. Kennecott has the biggest load, but they're not on the grid. They're partly on the grid. So, and that goes back to a bill President Adams passed way back when he was just Senator Adams. That was a different deal. But Nucor is the biggest one today, and they're at 90 megawatts. You see crashed cars going up the freeway on flatbed trucks. They're going to Nucor, and they go into these big pots where they put these electrodes in, and they turn them into molten steel.
No kidding.
And then they pour. Yeah, I've been up and visited them. It's quite spectacular. You see these big electrodes going into this big pot of crashed cars, and then with sparks, and it's like a volcano. And then in a minute, they dump out this big vat of molten steel, and they make new steel stuff, you know, like rebar and steel T-posts and things. Anyway, that load is 90 megawatts. That's the biggest one in the state. So I said, all right, so anything bigger than 90, I said 100. 100 is bigger than anything else. I have an ice cream factory in St. George. Makes ice cream for the western United States. You know how big that load is? I'll tell you, it's 5 megawatts. Nucor is 90 megawatts. So I said anything bigger than 100 is big. So, and we have some data centers in St. George, traditional data centers. They're like 10 megawatts. You know, the ones where our grandkids' photos.
Any idea what the AWS data center in South Jordan is doing?
So there's the AWS, I don't know that one, but there's another one that I do know in West Jordan that's like 250 megawatts, but they couldn't get it all from the grid, so they built their own generator. Anyway, which Utah law allows.
So they would be bigger than the 90 megawatts.
They would be bigger than the 90. Yeah.
Are they diesel in it? How are they?
Natural gas.
Oh,
Natural
so they're
gas.
burning it.
Yeah. And nobody knows they're there. I mean, I've talked to people who live near there. And I say, does that data center keep you up all night? And they're like, well, what data center? Because it's in this industrial park. There's a whole bunch of big
That's what I
buildings.
keep telling everybody. You guys are insane for protesting these things because they're everywhere, and you don't even know what's sitting there.
Yeah, this is 3 big buildings, and between them, I think it's 250 megawatts. And but it's in an industrial park with a whole bunch of other big buildings that make stuff. And so which one's the data center and which one makes, I don't know, harnesses. I can't remember what the other stuff makes in the area. They make stuff. But that's great. We love industrial parks. I have an industrial park in St. George. I, as if I'm the power company, but the power company I work for has an industrial park. Yeah, it has 3 big buildings of like the photo you showed earlier with the big servers. They're like 250 megawatts. They showed me their sub. They showed me their generator. I toured their whole facility. If you drive through there, you don't know. You can't pick out which one's the data center and which one's the other factories. Anyway, where were we going? Oh, size, the scale, right? We talked about the scale. Oh, and the law. We made the law. I had a law going into January 2025. I had already talked to the speaker about it and how Virginia was raising rates to bring these on. And he said, Colin, don't let that happen. I said, all right, if you help me, I won't. And so I had 2 senators who had laws on the same subject, but came at it from different points of view, some of which I didn't agree with as a power guy. And so, but leadership, Senate President, Speaker of the House said, the 3 of you get together and work on it, work it out, right? We're not going to have 3 conflicting laws. You guys work it. So nice. The 3 of us got together. I got most of what I got all of what I wanted, and I had to take some of what the other guys wanted too. They had some good ideas. Not all of them I liked, but I said, okay, so you got to accommodate, otherwise nothing gets done.
And what bill was this?
This was SB 132.
Okay.
And so we made it the law, so that passed in 2025. Like, again, the speaker, we go to the 3 of us, the 2 senators and me. We have to get referees every once in a while. We go to the speaker. He says, all right, I got 30 minutes. He'll take 3 hours with us. And we go to the President Adams. We need another referee. He says, okay, I'll give you 10 minutes. He said 20 minutes. He gave us 2 hours going through, okay, this. My My overarching thing as a power engineer at a co-op, reliable, affordable electricity. To me, nothing else matters.
Okay.
Reliable and affordable. So that's what I'm fighting for. Reliable and affordable. Do not raise rates. Do not raise rates. I have the lowest rates in the country. You can probably do some research, find out I'm only second lowest, but it's right there. We went to the governor at one point, and he said, okay, I'll give you 10 minutes. He spent an hour with us, but we got it sorted out and then we had 30, and I could give you names if you want, 30 lobbyists fighting against me every step of the way for all 7 weeks because they wanted us to socialize the costs of these
Of course.
data centers. But at the end, we got that bill across the finish line, House, Senate, the governor
So that
signed
bill is in place.
That bill is law since March
So
of
why
2025.
were they protesting this all up in Logan? Because they were all afraid that it's going to get spread out amongst everybody. If the law's in place, it never could have from the
It
beginning.
could not have since
So-
2025.
And this
This
is
whole
the first you're
protest
hearing about it.
Is bogus because they couldn't have spread it out anyway.
No, because I started worrying about that in 2024, and we did all of
I
the...
love
And the public
learning
deserved to know this.
Yeah.
and that's the problem. Is the public didn't know about it. And they're up there yelling at the commissioners, and it couldn't have gotten spread out to them anyway.
The commissioners didn't know.
I talked to the Box Elder County commissioners. I was presenting at the UAC conference, Utah Association of Counties. I was going in to present to the group of commissioners on something to do with energy. And the three of them were talking over there. They said, Colin, come over here, talk to us. And they had just learned about the data center. They got sprung on it, those guys.
Well, it's because it's MIDA. MIDA sprung it on everybody.
They got sprung, and they said, tell us about this. And I told them about SB 132. I said, look, this will not go into rates. And I said, now, here's the other thing. There's generation problems. There's transmission problems. There's this, but rates will be held whole. And so they said, oh, okay.
Okay, that's one factor.
Yeah. Right. So that's one factor I wanted to get out there because I knew every
super
article I
important.
read about people out protesting, I'm like,
It can't happen. The law's already passed.
you should be worried about it, but you should know that we solved this problem now
So
over
why
a
didn't
year
this-
and ago.
Why didn't the Senate president say something before this?
Oh gosh, I don't know.
He could have solved a lot of problems by coming out.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, if I have talked, anytime somebody asks me about data centers, the first thing I want to do is talk to you about the law we wrote in 2024, passed, and I know the governor got a lot of pressure to veto it. Those same data centers that fought me for 7 weeks lobbied
They
him.
want somebody else to pay for their power.
They absolutely do. Absolutely do. They lobbied him to veto that law. And I
I'm
was
so glad that passed.
my fingers were crossed, and he signed it into law.
That is such great news. But we have to remember who the boss is, and that's the people.
Absolutely. That's why I'm talking to you guys. I want, people go, well, Representative Jack, he's from St. George. He's a power engineer. What's he know?
Yeah. What
Well-
does he know about Box Elder?
Yeah. But I can tell you that 2 years before you worried about data centers, I was worrying about data centers. And that's my job as an engineer, is to deal with power problems before they become a problem. Anyway, so when we're talking about power, I feel like we have protected the rates.
Okay.
Problem solved.
Okay.
Now, what about the supply? Oh, do you
Well,
want?
no, the cooling.
Okay, all
Everybody's
right.
worried about water.
Yeah, so if we're going to
Rightly
water
so.
now, well, you should worry about water. We live in a desert. So I love the article that you summarized earlier, right? So there's big water use and little water use. And so the data centers that I have heard, and there's more than this one. This one's been in the news, but there's data centers up and down the state. And I get different data points from different ones. Sometimes you get real data from one. I go, ooh, that's a data point. And sometimes other ones are just noise. It's like when I worked overseas, people would hand me a big document about the project. Every time I got a telephone book of document, I would flip through it to find the one page. In that telephone book, there's usually one page of useful information. And so whenever I read these articles, I skim through them looking for the number. In this article somewhere is a number that's useful. And, you know, because a lot of it is just talk and noise and people saying things that they don't understand. I'm looking for the number. But I have found numbers that were useful and was able to piece together parts, right? I built a spreadsheet. All right, well, we're talking acre feet here, talking gallons here. Where are we at? And so then, oh, okay, this is it. So what I have learned is when you're converting from ag land to data centers, at least in that case, the cases where I could piece together the numbers, the data center is going to use about 3/5 or 60% of the water that the ag was using on
So
that.
glad you mentioned that, because I've had 5 people come up to me and say the same. I don't know what the problem is, because with ag land,
And we love ag land.
you love ag land, but
I love to
when
eat.
you got an alfalfa field,
Yeah.
and most often it's just alfalfa fields,
Right.
or hay fields.
Yeah.
And they're flooding the fields, they're sprinkling the fields. The data center will use 3/5 of the water that the alfalfa and the ag land will use. So they're actually using less water than what the land is currently using already.
Yeah.
And I've heard that 5 different times from 5 different
Oh,
people.
have you? Well, I
Yeah.
did that math all by myself. Now you're telling me somebody else has already
Yeah,
done it.
they've already put that out there. And,
Oh, okay.
And I started commenting about that. This last week, I started saying the same thing in my comment section. I'm like, I don't know what you guys are mad about, because according to the people I've spoken to, the 40,000 acre data center is going to use less water than the land is already using right now.
Yeah, that's true. That's my calculation.
Well, in defense of the people, they have been lied to about so many things for so many years. I don't blame people for being
and so the things
And
when
it's because they're using this multi-phase immersion cooling that still uses water, but not near what the NSA center is using down in Lehigh. And that's when everybody thinks data center and thinks cooling, that's what they think of as
yeah.
the NSA center.
And all the things I hear people protest about are worth being worried about. You should be worried about your rates going up. I worried about that, but I think I solved that. Me and my colleagues.
Obviously did.
You should be worried about water use. We live in a desert. Yes, you should always think about that. But know that in this case, it's going to use about 60%, which is 40% less than what was already being used. So this is not new water. Because of SB 132, they're going to bring their own generation. Now, they say, well, what about air pollution? Well, we already have air standards in place. We have a division of air quality in Utah, so they know how much air pollution would be made from natural gas generators. Then they know how much. They can calculate how much generator you could put in that air shed. They have big
Create your own
models
power.
to create your own power. And if there's not enough air shed to keep air quality at the standards, then they won't let them build. They won't give them a permit to build that much.
And people are going to complain about that. So we just mentioned that the data center down in Salt Lake Valley already has their own generator,
Yeah.
where they're creating their own power, because it's 250 megawatts, right?
Yeah.
The max is 90 or 100.
The biggest
they're already
one.
doing it. No one's complained about the air quality there, right?
Right, because they're inside the permit level of the air shed.
There, so the next big thing is,
so
and
we
I've
do
heard
control
this like
air quality.
I've heard this like 5 times in our comment section, is, well, the system is so hot it's going to raise the temperature of the valley. I literally,
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
I'm like, I've got no engineering experience, and I can tell you that's asinine. I mean, that's almost stupid thinking about, but it's out there. People honestly think
Well, there was
that it's going to raise the temperature of the valley.
some science teacher, I think, in Salt Lake in the Tribune calculated the heat and said it's the heat of this fraction. The heat equals the fraction of a nuclear bomb. So instead of measuring it in degrees, he said, okay, well, how many degrees divided by nuclear
How
bomb?
many kelvins is doing it?
So yeah. So okay, it's a, 1/32 of a nuclear explosion, and everybody's like, nuclear explosions? We're gonna have nuclear explosions? Because if you choose those words, that's the only words their eyes zoom into. So whenever you pave a field, you get a heat island effect. That's part of the whole scam about global warming, is they had these temperature stations stationed around
the cities.
Well, they were in
Concrete
rural areas, and then the city expanded and paved it, and the weather station is still there, but now it's on cement instead of on an alfalfa field. The temperature, look how much it went up in the last few years. Surprise, you create heat islands by paving rural. So, okay, you'll create some heat island when you convert from alfalfa production to a
Concrete
building,
and asphalt.
concrete and asphalt, but that data center is not going to cover that whole farm they're planning to build out.
Yeah, but the likelihood of that thing raising the temperature of
Oh, yeah, no, raising the temperature of the state or the county
the valley there.
or the valley, no, that's not going to.
Well, I was outdoor knocking in those areas, and what they were bringing up is they were worried, one, on top of those things, the emissions, they said, and then they have to drain the water occasionally, and it emits all these toxins into my water.
And that won't be allowed. We have division of air quality. We have division of water quality. All of that is regulated by the state. Now, none of us here are big fans of state bureaucracy and regulation, but we are fans of clean air and clean water. And so we have implemented state departments to do that. And so long as our state department is meeting, we have to make sure our state departments meet EPA standards, then EPA gives us primacy and lets us administrate it here so that we don't have to go to DC for every one of these permits, and let the state Department of Environmental Quality, which then under that is Department of Air Quality, Department of Water Quality, Department of Waste Management, wastewater, all of that. All of those folks work for the state and maintain the state environmental quality, which we all want to protect air and water. Yes, we do. So nobody is letting them. This is not 1700s England where anything goes and just let it go out into the rivers. That absolutely. This is
there
not
any benefit to the
1969.
public where they will benefit from any overage of power or any other thing?
So that's a very excellent question. And so and nobody asked me, I'm just a dumb engineer, but they asked the PR guys, apparently they failed. But if you came in here and said, look, how would everybody like a 90% property tax rate cut? Who
They'd
would have
love
signed
that.
up for that?
Yeah.
Well, that's what something like this could do, right? They're coming in, and they'll come in at such a high property tax valuation that it will be worth more than the county budget. The county can't charge somebody more than their budget. So what it will do is, when they equalize the county tax rates between this new tenant and everybody else, this new tenant will end up paying 90% of the county budget, and everybody else's property taxes will go down to 10%.
Would be true if it wasn't for MIDA.
Oh, that's right. They're getting all the benefit.
That's the shove, right? And this is what we spoke about with Tina Cannon. Tina Cannon did a town hall, and I spoke to her offline. And this is the corruptness of MIDA. So the entire tax base, all of that money goes to MIDA, and it does not go to the county. Tina she says straight up that she says bad ruling on this, but the county will not get a penny from it because all of it goes to MIDA.
Yeah, so MIDA has distorted the whole economics of the thing in a way that,
And the whole purpose they were created for.
well, so they were created, right, for Hill Air Force Base and military
Now they've
installations.
expanded.
And that expansion, so MIDA was created way before I was a legislator. Their expansion was also before I was a legislator. And so they've now expanded into areas that make no sense to me. I don't know.
You got the ski resort they're promoting down in Salt Lake Valley. You've got
up in Park City.
up at Park City. There's got another thing going on in Weber County that they're getting involved with.
And these are all unelected people, minus the ones who also hold public office.
Yeah, so I don't know what was presented to the legislature at the time that they expanded their thing, but I do know that given where we're at today, that legislators have bill files open to bring MIDA back to the purpose of
They should
military installations.
Installations only.
Which is why it's so important that we are electing those who are going to keep those things in mind and vote that way.
Well, I mean, let's just go to the heart of this whole problem. And I'd hate to say this because he's a friend, but we had a big podcast with Braden Hess and we discussed this. Stuart Adams knows that the Bill 138 was passed, so he knew there wasn't going to be a power problem up there.
SB 132.
Yeah, SB 132. He knew that passed because it went through the Senate to get passed.
Oh, yeah.
Knew-
It was a Senate bill.
Oh, it was a Senate bill.
So I had a House bill, and I told you there were
So
two senators.
he passed the bill. He could have gone up there and told the public that no, it's not going to go down on you at all. I
don't know.
He knows that it's going to be using less water. He knows that it's going to be using this other kind of cooling system, the submersive cooling, right? It's going to be using less water. He knows all this. But,
he sits on the board
but
of
he's
MIDA.
not. He's the chairman
chair.
of the board of MIDA. I mean, he's the boss of MIDA. He rules MIDA just as much as he rules the Senate. He rules MIDA. And so on our very first podcast, and we got all this pushback saying you guys are supporting data centers, and we got a ton of pushback in our comments section. And I said, the one rule that I would have, or the three rules that I would have is it can't affect the public power-wise, can't raise their bills. It can't be using more power or more water than what it's already using, which it isn't. It's using 40% less. And there has to be a public benefit to the local population. They have to get a benefit out of it, right? A tax-based something.
Yeah.
It has the first two.
They should get the tax base.
And because of MIDA, they're not. MIDA needs to get pulled. It needs to get that whole data center needs to get pulled out of MIDA, go back to the county. Commissioners can take charge of it. That's why we have county commissioners for.
That's why
they
you
can
have
get
county commissioners.
they can get the tax base for it. I don't know why we have this extra organization called MIDA, other than Hill Air Force Base or maybe Tooele
Fort Williams
or the Tooele Depot.
Tooele Depot. Make a list.
So the people need to fight for either MIDA to go back to its original purpose or be dissolved if it's not necessary anymore, and no data center until that gets.
Yeah, and we get Braden Hess in there, and not Stephanie Hollis, so nobody better be voting for her.
It shouldn't even be between
I
her
would
and-
rather have Stuart Adams 10 times over than Stephanie Hollis in there.
Let those two sling mud at each other. Vote for Braden Hess.
Yeah, vote for Braden Hess. We want to put that out there. And problem solved.
Well, so my slice of this equation was in the power.
Yeah. And you solved it a year ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
What?
So,
I mean, this is the first time I'm hearing of it. As you're telling everybody this, I'm like, it's already done?
And then I backed up the people before, but if the people had been this involved as they are now during the whole process, you would know this. And this is why you don't go to sleep on government.
yeah. Well, so I got involved as
And it takes somebody from the opposite end of the state, St. George, to Box Elder to figure this out.
well, power is my passion, and I've done it for 40 years. And I got elected to my position 4 years ago. I'm up for re-election for
Whoever
my third
runs
term.
against you is going to use that against you. He just wants power. Power is his passion.
power
He
is
said
my-
so himself.
Literally, I said those words. Because I've worked in third world countries, and life is not better in Haiti than it is in the United
Amen.
States.
I'm so glad we solved that. I mean, that's the biggest. I am going to tout this all over our social media.
And now the people know where to take their fight.
Yeah, and people fighting me in the comments section. I'm like, no, you don't have a leg to stand on now.
But can you tell us one more thing about the land? Is that you have those arguing, well, that's private land that was turned over to them. Why does the public have a say so?
The land was turned over to MIDA.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of private property rights.
Right.
And so, that's always the struggle is should your neighbor have the ability to do with his land
Whatever he wants to do with it.
you don't want him to do to his land. And I always tell people, well, Washington County, the big thing is stop building homes, stop building new subdivisions. And I'm like, well, look, number one, I'm not the king of Washington County, so I don't get to pick. But number two, if you don't want farms turned into subdivisions, you should go buy the farm and then you hold it and don't build a subdivision.
Problem solved, right?
I can't do that. I don't have that money, but maybe the guy complaining does.
Fair.
I mean, well, it's in the Constitution. You have the right to own your own land and do whatever you want with your own land. And now we've got cities heavily regulating it. There's, zoning commissions and all this kind of stuff that are trying to keep the city somewhat organized, but even zoning commissioners are getting a little power hungry and over-regulating what people can and cannot do with their own properties. And I think most cities need to get way toned down when it comes to that type of regulation.
And we hear that at the state all the time. People come to us at the state and say, we want the state to tell the cities they can't to tone it down. And we're like, okay, now you got City Hall. You want City Hall making your rules, or do you want the state legislature? I mean, because cities are subdivisions of the state. We can come in and override the cities if you really
Is that
want us
really
to.
what you want?
And, so...
Well, we talked about that in our podcast literally last week.
Okay.
Is because of housing, right? Housing's just like crazy
absolutely.
expensive. Everybody's yelling at the state because it's expensive. And I was specific on that podcast. I'm like, the state's not doing it. Go talk to your city council commissions, because when the state hands down a regulation saying you need to have so much high density housing so that the housing prices come out, the city's like, great, we have this regulation. We don't want to develop anywhere. We're not going to let anybody develop flag lots or any special properties. But there's a 300 condominium project right here. We'll let them develop that out, and that solves our unit problem, right?
Yeah, so we met the quota that
We met the quota, but we didn't help housing at all. Yeah, and then they regulate high-density housing to downtown areas where the land's more expensive, which raises the cost of the units. They're not letting high-density out in rural areas where the land's a little bit cheaper, so that overall cost of housing would be cheaper. They're not bringing down their building permit and other fees down, so the overall cost, and they're over-feeing people, because some of these building permit fees are astronomical. $40,000 for a building permit fee.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And these condominium projects, some of their billing for permit fees are $500,000. And and you want to know why the condo costs so much or the apartment costs so much? Talk to your city council.
Well, and people really, if we're talking about people being involved in watching, don't go to sleep on politics. Think of politics as a pyramid, and the big base of the pyramid, you should pay attention most to your city politics. And then the next level, pay attention second most to your county, third most to the state. And the little tip, don't spend more than 5 minutes a day looking at national news. It's interesting to all of us because that's all the news you get on the it's national, because they don't care about cities and counties. But the people who live in those city counties, they should care about it. And if you just worry about what Georgia's doing or Pennsylvania's doing or California's doing, You're giving yourself a heart attack for no good reason with nothing that you can control. You could control what's going on in the city and county and state. I mean, us representatives, we run for office every 2 years. So
And when do people most show up to vote?
I am never not campaigning to my constituents. I want them to know what I'm doing. I want them to know I'm working for them and I'm representing them, which is the way it's designed. That's why we have 2-year terms. They want us to be responsive, and so we are. But if you're worried about what the politicians in California are doing, or Florida, or Maine, you'll give yourself a heart attack with no way to solve it.
So on this Bill 132 that you passed,
SB
132, did you have to dilute it at all or get stuff that you wanted in there weren't able to get in there?
Well, you got most of.
I got everything I wanted. There were 2 things I wanted. One was that costs could not be socialized. And 2 is I wanted to take the evaluation out of the FERC queue. FERC is Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and they regulate large loads coming onto the grid. And that queue to apply to come onto the grid, if you're a large load, is interminable. You put your name on there and then tell your grandkid to come check on it after you're dead sometime. So I wanted to take these large loads out of that queue and make its own queue. And so I got both of those things. A couple of things that I wasn't real hip about, but came in and, maybe they'll make it better, is to require the utility to wheel power from third-party generators to this site. I said, well, okay, we'll do that. I'm not real hip on it because it looks a lot like some deregulation. One of the things I was worried about that we had to negotiate how to do it is how to let maybe a third-party generator generate somewhere else and bring it into a separate site, which is part of the FERC regulation. FERC regulates any kind of transmission access. But now this is kind of regulating or allowing for some interstate wheeling without getting caught into FERC, how to navigate that. I was worried about that.
And that's something another senator wanted.
And one of the other senators brought that, and we figured it out. Okay, I was worried it was going to cause problems, but I think we worked on it we worked on that like 24/7 for 7 weeks. If you look at how much other bills I got done in 2025, it's lower than average because I was spending 70% of my hours, some of which used to be for sleep, on SB 132. And one of the other things we did that I was worried about.
And the people should be grateful you did.
Well, if it all works, nobody will even know other than the fact that the rates didn't go up. And then the other thing that we did was, okay, if you're a generator, let's say you're a generation company, and you want to come into an area and you build a generating station and you build yourself an industrial park, you can have data centers or other large loads come into your park and you can serve them kind of wholesale and not be considered retail like a utility, which was kind of a big concept, but we worked through some of the gymnastics of doing that without shifting costs to ratepayers and without jeopardizing supply to all of Utah. And that was my fight with everybody else who came with these big ideas. Okay, let's see if we can do it. But number one, we can't raise rates to everyone. And number two is you can't jeopardize the supply to everyone. Everyone in the state has to be held whole. Even so, it was tricky to navigate how to do those. And But we
Well,
did
it
them.
shouldn't be tricky. It's just a lot of people with special interest wanting to push the boundary.
We had 30 lobbyists who were trying to get us to socialize all of that.
Yeah.
for their own
Because
benefit.
there's a lot of the states that are very socialized like that.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of states who have made really big mistakes in this area, and I feel like in Utah we successfully did it. And and if that's not the last bill, I had some really good bills this last session in 26. But if SB 132 were the only bill I had done in my time, that would have been a good.
Been worth it because that's a huge accomplishment. You got everybody to pass without cutting it down,
Yeah.
chopping it up,
Yep. So that was huge.
and our governor even signed it, which is amazing.
And he signed it, and he had a lot of pressure to veto it.
Wow, that is amazing.
People need to share this episode, especially with your friends in Box Elder. They deserve to know the facts.
Yeah, I feel bad when people are protesting for nothing. Be concerned about the right things, that's fine.
Yeah.
Learn what the state has done to solve those problems. We're concerned about air, water, and power.
We need to call the Box Elder commissioners and have them on after this episode. I want
Yeah.
that'd be an interesting conversation, what they're going through up there.
Yeah, and I feel bad.
Yeah, they'll probably lose their seats in office too over this.
Yeah, and I don't think it's their fault.
No.
I feel bad when people are so worked up. People can get worked up, but they should be be healthy and be engaged and not be enraged about things that maybe we've already solved. Mm-hmm. And I feel bad that we've failed to communicate that to them, so they're worried about stuff.
This
Again, I
was
just
excellent.
go back to the problem that MIDA has gone way beyond its borders, and it's literally causing this entire uproar for nothing. And it's stealing money from the public, because why are they getting the money and the county is not, right? Why are they getting involved in ski resorts and other sites when...
And the chair has made so much money, even if this doesn't go through. He's already made.
They take a lot of money off of it.
I don't know. All I do is spend money to be a legislator. If people are making money
Yep.
doing this job, I don't
Well,
know.
if you
how
want to
they
be
do
a
it.
chair in MIDA, then you'll make money.
Yeah, he got himself punted in his chair, so...
This was excellent. Excellent.
I
Very
greatly
important
appreciate you
episode.
coming up all the way up from St. George.
Thank you for inviting me.
I hope everybody down in St. George appreciates the legislator that you have down there. When are you up for re-election?
Every 2 years. So
You're campaigning right now, then. But
I am campaigning now, but my opponent is in November.
Yeah,
I don't have a primary, but I do have a Democrat running against me.
yeah, that's not going to be too hard down in your area.
Well, so statistically, St. George is red, and I just don't want to underperform.
Of course.
Well, they should be proud of you for what you are getting done.
Thank you.
Looking forward to this next session and seeing what else you can get done. Glad you're on board, and I hope this thing goes viral and everybody kind of learns a lot about, because this is a long podcast about power, and we went through
I'm sorry. that
No,
I
and
told-
if you fast forwarded to get to the juice here at the end about the data center, you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't watch on all the other elements. You will get a great
Especially his
education.
credentials at the beginning is why he knows what he knows. So
Well, hopefully it built on each other, right? I told you the long version,
Yeah, you did.
and one thing built on the next.
Well, now
it's
I know
fascinating
who to
what
go
you
to.
did down in these jungles, because that's crazy cool too. That's fascinating stuff.
Yeah, it's a good memory. It was tough at the time.
I hope you're young at that
What a
time.
I
legacy.
was young at that time. How old was I? When I did my first project in Guatemala, I was like 32. It was good.
Did you drag your kids down there? Yes.
I dragged my kids to Bangladesh for 3 years, and I dragged my kids to Bolivia for 4 years.
How old were they at the time?
So my baby, when we went to Bangladesh, was 4.
Wow.
And then my oldest, he did all 4 years of high school in Bolivia.
Really? So is he bilingual then?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, my kids are. That's why I had a long other story, but I chose Bolivia over the former Soviet Republic of Georgia at that time because I wanted my kids to learn Spanish.
Wow, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a big educational difference between high schools down there and high schools up here, though.
There is. Although on both ends, the public schools down there are not great, which is to say pretty bad. But they went to the private American school there.
Okay, that makes sense.
Which cost, $10,000 a year per kid.
Well, you're lucky it was only $10,000 a year per kid, because I hear some private schools are $10,000 a month per kid.
Yeah. Well, this was in Bolivia, and if you went to that school, locals paid that kind of price, that $10,000 a year. That's real money to Bolivians. Yeah. They put their kids there because they knew if they went to that school, they were going to get accepted to whatever university they applied for, including Harvard or Yale or Oxford or Cambridge.
What do you say?
But it was a good school, and my kids were fortunate to go there. But
hope everybody liked and enjoyed this podcast. Like, share, and subscribe. Make sure you're sharing us out there. Again, Tuesday, the major election. We want to make sure we can get Braden Hess in there, Carrie Ann Lisenby, Trevor Lee, Phil Lyman, for those of you down there in southern Utah, and many others around the state. If you have people you want to see on the podcast, please reach out to us, email, or in our comments section. We appreciate everybody being on board, and we will talk to everybody on the next video.